Elon Musk had done it all: revolutionized electric cars with Tesla, sent rockets to space with SpaceX, and even made headlines for his eccentricity. But now, he was about to do something that no one expected. He would embark on a bizarre experiment that would test the very fabric of social status and human empathy. Elon had a question that had been nagging at him for some time. What would happen if I were not Elon Musk, the billionaire, but just another face in the crowd? What if he, the man behind Tesla and SpaceX, could slip under the radar, dressed as a homeless person, and see how people would treat him on a luxury flight? His decision came after a long, exhausting week of meetings and interviews. It wasn't the fatigue that wore him down, but the feeling of isolation that came with fame and fortune. He was often surrounded by people who wanted something from him, but how many of them actually saw him as a human being? This idea of anonymity, of not being Elon Musk, intrigued him. So, he set a plan in motion, one that would bring him face to face with the elite of the elite, people who could afford the finest things in life, like private jets and first-class tickets. But what would they do if a homeless man showed up in the same space? Would they offer help, or would they look the other way? Elon had one goal in mind: to understand the divide between the privileged and the disadvantaged. And he was going to do this in the most unconventional way possible. He packed a small bag, throwing in a change of clothes, and set off to the airport. His disguise was simple: dirty clothes, a disheveled look, and a scruffy beard. He could feel the eyes of the people at the airport fall on him, but he remained in character. With a quiet smile, he headed to the gate for his flight. He was about to test more than just the luxury of a first-class cabin. He was going to test humanity. As Elon boarded the plane, he slipped into an empty seat in first class. He could feel the looks of confusion and discomfort from the passengers as they whispered to each other, unsure of how to react. Some turned their heads in disgust, while others nervously avoided eye contact. In that moment, he realized just how stark the divide was between the classes. He wasn't even speaking, but already, he felt invisible in a way that was unfamiliar to him. He didn't care about the glances, though. He wasn't here for their approval. He was here to see what would happen next. The flight attendants, noticing him, seemed unsure whether to offer him the same treatment as other passengers. Would they treat him with the same courtesy as they did the wealthy customers, or would they let him feel the sting of being an outsider? The plane took off, and the luxury of the first-class cabin seemed to fade into the background as Elon's mind raced. He wasn't just testing how people treated him, he was questioning the system. What kind of world had they created, where the value of a person was determined by what they wore or how much money they had? Elon Musk wasn't always the world-renowned billionaire he was today. In fact, his journey to success was anything but conventional. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, Elon grew up in a middle-class family, but his early life was far from easy. His parents divorced when he was young, and his father was emotionally distant, leaving Elon to largely fend for himself. He spent much of his childhood immersed in books, his mind constantly whirring with ideas of how to change the world. But the road wasn't without its struggles. At the age of 12, Elon sold his first computer game, a space-themed game called Blaster, to a computer magazine. It was a small success, but it ignited a fire in him, a fire that would push him to take risks and break boundaries. Despite his early ambitions, he faced a great deal of bullying in school. His peers didn't understand his obsession with technology, and they often picked on him for being different. Yet, those painful years shaped him. They gave him the resilience to withstand failure and the clarity to see beyond the present moment. As he grew older, Elon moved to Canada to attend Queen's University and later transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned degrees in both economics and physics. The transition from a small-town boy in South Africa to a young adult navigating the complexities of North American life wasn't easy. But Elon thrived in the academic world, and soon, his entrepreneurial spirit led him to Silicon Valley. By the time he was 30, Elon had already founded Zip2, an online software company, which he sold for nearly $300 million. The money flowed in, but so did the pressure. His personal life began to unravel. His relationships were strained, and the weight of constantly being in the public eye took its toll. He was no longer the scrappy entrepreneur with big ideas. He had become the face of Silicon Valley, a a tech mogul with a fortune and a seemingly flawless career. But despite his wealth and success, he often felt a deep sense of isolation. In the years that followed, Elon built PayPal, which was eventually sold to eBay for $1.5 billion. He used that money to fund SpaceX, Tesla, and his other ventures, which were all fueled by his passion to reshape humanity's future. He was on top of the world, but the sense of fulfillment he had always hoped for eluded him. Elon had always been driven by more than just money. He sought to prove to the world, and to himself, that he could make a difference. But in the process, he'd lost touch with something fundamental: human connection. Wealth and fame had built a wall around him, a barrier that separated him from the very people he was trying to help. His public persona was larger than life, but it was also a mask, a facade he hid behind to avoid the raw vulnerability of simply being human. Despite all his achievements, Elon often felt disconnected, unable to fully relate to the world he had created. The idea of pretending to be homeless wasn't just a challenge. It was a chance for him to break free of the trappings of fame and wealth, to see if he could rediscover the humanity he felt was slipping through his fingers. It wasn't about proving a point to the world. It was about understanding what it was like to be forgotten, overlooked, and ignored. Elon had spent so much of his life as an outsider, whether it was in school or in the boardroom. He wondered if this was what real life looked like for most people. The idea of being able to walk among them, unseen and unheard, was both thrilling and unsettling. But now, as he sat in the plush seat of a first-class cabin, disguised as a homeless man, Elon began to understand just how different the world looked when you didn't wear the right suit or drive the right car. It was strange, this feeling of invisibility, but there was also a strange freedom in it. For the first time in a long while, Elon wasn't the center of attention. He wasn't a billionaire genius with answers to all the world's problems. He was just another person in the crowd, someone who was being judged by his appearance alone. The moment the plane reached cruising altitude, the discomfort of Elon's disguise became palpable. He had expected some awkward glances, maybe a few whispers, but he hadn't anticipated how quickly the divide between him and the other passengers would become so apparent. The flight attendants, walking down the aisle with their crisp uniforms and bright smiles, seemed unsure how to handle the situation. They glanced at Elon, then at the other first-class passengers, before moving on. It was clear, he didn't belong here. Elon remained quiet, trying his best to stay in character, but a part of him couldn't help but notice the way the others behaved. A man in a designer suit, sitting across the aisle from him, shot him a judgmental look before returning to his phone. A woman next to him, dressed in a high-end dress, subtly covered her mouth with a napkin when she leaned forward to ask the flight attendant for another glass of champagne, her eyes lingering on him. She had definitely seen him, but she wanted to keep her distance. Musk sat back, observing. Every tiny interaction made him feel more like an outsider, an invisible presence that didn't matter. The polite indifference from the flight attendants was perhaps the most telling. It wasn't cruelty, but rather a resigned, mechanical response to someone who didn't fit the profile of a typical first-class passenger. They treated him with the same professional distance they would someone invisible. As the in-flight meal was served, things became even more tense. The flight attendants moved past Elon without offering him a menu. The other passengers, who had no idea who he was, seemed comfortable, even smug in their wealth and privilege. A man 2 rows ahead chuckled as he read his business section, loudly mentioning how much he hated seeing those kinds of people on his flight. Elon felt a wave of discomfort wash over him. Those kinds of people. The word stung more than he expected. His heart raced as he tried to keep his composure. This wasn't just an experiment anymore. This was real. His stomach churned, but he held firm. He couldn't back out now. He was in the middle of something much larger than himself. Minutes passed, and the tension in the cabin grew thicker. Elon felt like a living, breathing contradiction. Here he was, a billionaire, sitting among the elites, yet invisible and unwanted. He glanced out the window, trying to steady his emotions. This was more than an experiment about social class. It was about understanding the walls that separated people. How quickly a person could be judged based on their appearance, how easily they could be disregarded. He thought about the early days when he was just starting out. Those were the days when people dismissed him. His ideas, his dreams, they were all laughed at by the mainstream. And now, years later, he was experiencing the opposite side of the coin. Wealth, success, and fame had given him everything except human connection. It had isolated him, locked him behind walls that made it difficult to relate to others on a personal level. Then, a young woman, no older than 25, seated a few rows ahead, turned around and looked at him. At first, it was just a quick glance, but then their eyes met. For a moment, there was no judgment, no condescension. It was just two people acknowledging each other's existence. Elon held her gaze for a beat longer than he should have. She didn't look away. Elon's mind raced. Was this the moment? Would she say something? Would she offer him a seat next to her, perhaps a drink, an offer of kindness? Or would she, like everyone else, ignore him? But she didn't speak. Instead, after what felt like an eternity, she stood up and walked to the front of the cabin to speak to the flight attendant. Elon's heart sank. It was a fleeting connection, a glance, and then nothing. The realization hit him hard. People weren't just dismissing him because of his clothes. They were dismissing him because he didn't belong. No one belonged in this world unless they were one of them. A flight attendant passed by again. This time, he stopped, looked at Elon, and asked if he needed anything. For a moment, Elon wondered if the attendant had seen through the disguise, or if he was just being polite. But there was no recognition in the attendant's eyes, just a professional, neutral glance. Elon, still in character, shook his head and muttered, "No, I'm good." The attendant nodded curtly and moved on. The cabin continued to buzz with conversation and laughter, the soft hum of luxury swirling around him. But all Elon could hear was the deafening silence that seemed to echo louder the longer he stayed in his disguise. It wasn't just about the people on this plane anymore. It was about everything he had ever known, everything he had built, everything that had brought him here. Was this experiment really worth it? Or was he simply reinforcing the very barriers he had tried so hard to break down? The flight continued, but the hours seemed to drag on for Elon. As the plane cruised over the clouds, he found himself becoming more introspective, questioning everything that led him to this moment. The opulence of the cabin around him, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, it all seemed so hollow. How had he let himself become part of this world, so detached from the real human experience? But then something unexpected happened. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing that the plane would experience some turbulence in the coming minutes. A slight shift in the atmosphere was enough to shake up the carefully composed environment of the first-class cabin. Passengers looked around nervously, a few of them gripping their armrests as the plane shifted. For a split second, the veneer of luxury seemed to fade, and the reality of flight, of danger, of vulnerability, set in. Elon watched the passengers' faces change. The man in the designer's suit, who had previously cast him an arrogant glance, now gripped the edge of his seat. The woman who had looked at him with disdain now clenched her seatbelt, her fingers trembling. And that's when it happened. A loud voice erupted from the front of the cabin. It was the young woman he had briefly locked eyes with earlier. She was standing in the aisle, calling out to the flight attendants with a panic-stricken voice. "I need help. I'm claustrophobic. Please, I can't breathe." Her words were rushed and frantic. She began to hyperventilate, her face turning pale. For a moment, the chaos that followed felt like an eerie mirror of the situation he had been observing. The calm, collected, elite passengers were suddenly rattled. They had been comfortable in their bubble, insulated from fear, and now that comfort was shattered. Everyone around her seemed to freeze. Some stared in confusion, while others looked away, unsure how to respond. Elon's instincts kicked in. As the flight attendants rushed to the woman, he stood up, his discomfort momentarily forgotten. He moved toward her, his voice calm and steady, trying to reassure her. "Hey, it's okay. Just breathe slowly, in and out. You're going to be fine," he said, his words gentle, but firm. The woman looked up at him, her eyes wide and frantic, but when she saw him, something shifted. Perhaps it was his voice, or maybe just the simple act of someone reaching out when no one else had. She nodded slowly and began to calm her breathing, though she was still visibly shaken. The flight attendant stepped in and guided her to a seat, continuing to help her with oxygen. As the situation settled down, the cabin slowly returned to its previous state of luxury. But the mood had changed. The perfect composure of the first-class passengers had been shattered, even if just for a moment. Elon sat back in his seat, his heart pounding. What had just happened? The woman's panic had revealed something deeper, the vulnerability that lay beneath the polished exterior of the people around him. In that moment, he had seen how fragile they all were, despite their wealth and social status. It wasn't just about the plane or the luxury they had. It was about the fear of the unknown, the uncontrollable. He thought about the people who lived in constant fear, not of turbulence on a plane, but of losing their homes, of never knowing where their next meal would come from, of feeling completely powerless in a world that didn't care. They didn't have the luxury of panic attacks being resolved with a quick dose of oxygen and a reassuring voice. They lived with that fear every day. The woman had received sympathy, attention, and help when she was in distress. But how many people out there, people living on the streets or in shelters, were treated as if their struggles didn't matter? Elon knew that the whole point of his experiment had been to understand the gap between the privileged and the marginalized. But what he hadn't anticipated was how quickly people's perceptions of others could change when fear entered the equation. In a heartbeat, the well-dressed, well-mannered elite had been thrown into chaos. And yet, despite that brief moment of vulnerability, they quickly returned to their comfort, their world of luxury, as if nothing had happened. The turbulence passed, but the internal storm Elon was experiencing raged on. He felt both empowered and deeply saddened by what he had witnessed. Was this what it took to make people see the humanity in others? To be forced to experience fear? To feel vulnerable? What would it take for people to see that everyone, regardless of their social status, had the same basic needs, the same fears? Elon was no longer just observing this experiment. He was living it, feeling it, and in that moment, the reality of his experiment became painfully clear. This wasn't just about seeing how people treated someone who appeared to be homeless. It was about understanding the deeper flaws in society. It was about empathy. It was about recognizing that everyone, no matter who they were or how they appeared, deserved dignity. The woman had calmed down, but as she sat back in her seat, her eyes met Elon's once again. This time, there was no judgment. There was only a soft, quiet acknowledgement, an unspoken understanding that perhaps, just perhaps, there was more to people than the clothes they wore or the wealth they carried. And for a moment, Elon felt as if his experiment might have achieved something after all. As the plane continued its journey through the sky, the tension in the cabin began to settle. The luxury and tranquility returned, but the atmosphere had shifted. Elon was no longer just an observer in this world. He was part of it, experiencing the same judgments and fears that came with being on the fringes of society. Just as he thought the experience would drift back to the status quo, something unexpected happened. The flight attendants began to prepare for the descent, and Elon, now feeling the weight of his disguise more than ever, stood up to stretch his legs. The woman who had panicked earlier caught his eye again. This time, she smiled at him, a small, tentative smile. Elon wasn't sure if it was a gesture of gratitude or just an acknowledgement of the odd bond they had shared in that brief moment of vulnerability. But before he could respond, she stood up and made her way toward him. He tensed, unsure of what to expect. He had been anticipating nothing more than a cold, formal farewell, as was typical in the world he had just observed. But what happened next caught him completely off guard. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "I know you probably didn't think much of it, but the way you helped me earlier, even when no one else seemed to care, it meant a lot." Elon was taken aback. The rest of the cabin had already started to settle down, and no one seemed to be paying attention to their conversation. But her words hung in the air, louder than any of the superficial exchanges that had taken place on this flight. "Don't mention it," Elon replied, his voice softer than he intended. "I just did what anyone would have done." She shook her head, her eyes glistening with unspoken gratitude. "I don't think anyone else would have done the same. People just look past people like me, people who aren't important." Elon's heart clenched. Her words struck a chord deeper than he expected. This was the core of everything he had been grappling with during this experiment. The way people, including himself, had been conditioned to see others based on their status, their wealth, their appearances. This woman, who had been treated with such indifference before her panic attack, had just expressed something that was too real to ignore. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable earlier," she continued, sensing his internal conflict. "I know I don't belong here. It's not something I can change." Elon's mind raced. She doesn't belong here? He looked at her closely. She wasn't some random person with no aspirations, no worth. She was someone with her own dreams and struggles, someone who was deserving of respect. The plane, the luxury, the class, it didn't define her. "No one should make you feel like you don't belong," Elon replied, his voice stronger now. "You have as much right to be here as anyone else." She paused, clearly taken aback by his words, as if she had never heard someone speak to her like that before. The powerful message of equality, of dignity for all, wasn't something she had encountered in this world of elite privilege. The recognition seemed to affect her deeply. She looked down for a moment, perhaps reflecting on the contrast between the treatment she had received and the words that were now coming from this stranger. Before Elon could say anything else, the captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing that the plane was beginning its descent into their destination. The moment felt fleeting, but it was also somehow transformative. In that brief exchange, both of them had been changed. Elon had learned that human connection, true empathy, wasn't bound by social status or wealth. And for the woman, perhaps this was the first time someone had acknowledged her worth without judgment, without looking at her as less than. As the plane touched down, Elon felt a strange mix of emotions. His experiment had taken an unexpected turn. The barriers that he had set out to observe had crumbled, if only for a moment, and in their place, a new truth had emerged. Wealth, status, and appearances had created an invisible wall between him and the rest of the world. But in that brief moment of vulnerability, something more powerful had been revealed. The undeniable humanity that connected all people, regardless of where they came from or what they owned. When the plane finally landed and passengers began to disembark, Elon remained seated for a few extra moments, reflecting on everything he had witnessed. The turbulence of the flight had felt like a metaphor for the turbulence in his own life. The more he tried to hide behind his wealth, the more disconnected he became. But in those moments when people were stripped of their pretensions, when they were vulnerable, they showed their true selves. He stood up, stretched his legs, and as the passengers began to exit, he exchanged a final glance with the woman. This time, it was a smile, not one filled with judgment or pity, but one filled with mutual respect. As Elon disembarked from the plane, his mind was still racing. The polished luxury of the first-class cabin, the wealth, the perceived superiority, it all felt like a distant memory now. What had seemed so important before, the status, the comforts, no longer held the same weight. Instead, a profound shift had occurred. The woman's words, her vulnerability, and the brief but meaningful connection they had shared had fundamentally changed his perspective. The airport was busy, the bustling noise of passengers rushing from gate to gate, people navigating their busy lives, unaware of the subtle transformation that had just taken place on a private jet. Elon could feel the weight of it all, the realization that, no matter how much one accumulated in life, it was the simplest acts of human kindness and the ability to see others as equals that truly mattered. As he made his way through the airport, he reflected on the journey he had just experienced. The experiment, at first, had been about observing the differences between the privileged and those who were not, but it had evolved into something far deeper. It was about the humanity that connected all of them, regardless of their wealth or status. Earlier, when he had sat in the first-class cabin, disguised as a homeless man, Elon had been prepared for indifference, for dismissal. What he had not anticipated was the overwhelming sense of isolation that came with it. He had seen the fear, the insecurity, the invisibility that people like the woman experienced on a daily basis. And he had seen how quickly, in a moment of panic, the veneer of wealth and luxury could be stripped away. When everyone had been vulnerable, when fear had entered the equation, people, no matter their class, had become equals, bound by their shared humanity. And yet, the truth of the world he had always known had come crashing down. How easy it was for people to dismiss others because they did not fit a certain mold. How quickly they could overlook the humanity in someone who did not conform to their idea of success or worth. How often the powerful, the wealthy, the influential lived in their bubbles, disconnected from the very people they might be able to help if only they acknowledged their existence. Elon knew that he couldn't undo the system of inequality in one day. But he also knew that this experience had opened his eyes to the ways in which he, too, had contributed to those walls. There was a reason he had been able to build companies that revolutionized industries, that changed the world in so many ways. But he had never thought deeply about how his wealth, his success, and his role in the world might keep him disconnected from the people he was trying to help. Now, as he stood in the bustling airport terminal, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He couldn't change the world overnight, but he could change the way he interacted with it. It wasn't enough to build rockets or electric cars. He needed to start by understanding people, by connecting with them, by breaking down the barriers that divided them. The future wasn't just about technology, it was about people. And in that moment, Elon Musk understood that more than ever before. As he made his way through the airport, Elon noticed a family sitting on a bench near the departure gate, huddled together, their clothes worn and tattered. They looked tired, hungry. He couldn't help but notice the way people avoided looking at them, as if acknowledging their presence would force them to confront the uncomfortable truth that there was no real divide between the privileged and the poor. Elon paused, unsure of what to do. He wasn't a stranger to charity, but something about this moment felt different. Something about this family, sitting there with their heads down, their faces full of quiet dignity, struck a chord deep within him. Without thinking, Elon approached the family, his footsteps slow and deliberate. The mother, who had been looking down at her children, looked up at him in surprise. Her eyes were wary, uncertain, but Elon smiled, offering a hand. "Hi, I'm Elon," he said simply, his voice gentle but firm. "I can't give you much, but would you like a meal? I know a place just nearby." The family hesitated, unsure of the offer, but the mother, after a moment of uncertainty, nodded. Elon led them to the nearest restaurant, where they sat together in the back, away from the bustling crowd, away from the stares of other patrons. It wasn't about grand gestures. It wasn't about offering them millions. It was about the simple act of connection, the willingness to see someone as a fellow human being, to offer them a moment of dignity and kindness, just as he had wished someone would have done for the woman on the plane. Over the meal, they talked about their struggles, their hopes, their dreams. Elon listened, truly listened, in a way that he never had before. The conversation was raw, unfiltered, and profoundly human. It wasn't about what they didn't have. It was about what they did, their strength, their love for one another, their resilience. As the meal came to an end and the family stood to leave, the mother thanked Elon with tears in her eyes. He shook her hand, feeling a deep sense of gratitude himself. "Take care of each other," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You're worth more than you know." As they walked away, Elon stood there for a moment, taking in the quiet of the moment. The world was vast, full of inequality and hardship. But in this brief encounter, he had learned something profound. The future didn't belong to those with the most power or the most wealth. It belonged to those who were willing to see and to care. The meal with the family in the airport lingered in Elon's thoughts long after he had left. It wasn't just the simple act of kindness that had struck him. It was the realization of how much impact small gestures could have. In a world so fast-paced, so focused on success and wealth, how often did people forget the basic needs of others? How many times had he himself, in his pursuit of technology and innovation, overlooked the human element that tied all of us together? Elon knew his experiment had uncovered something bigger than he had anticipated. It wasn't just about testing how people in the luxury plane reacted to him, pretending to be homeless. It wasn't even about understanding the divide between the rich and poor. It was about human connection, about the importance of seeing people for who they truly were, beyond the surface level, beyond the labels that society placed on them. As he walked through the busy streets of the city, he couldn't help but feel an overwhelming urge to do something more. This was no longer just about curiosity. It was about responsibility. He had the power, the resources, and the platform to influence change, and now he knew that he had to use that for good. But where to start? How could one man change the system, break the barriers, and make a real impact? The problem wasn't new, but perhaps his perspective on it was. Elon had always been driven by technology, innovation, and creating things that would revolutionize industries. But in that moment, he realized that revolutionizing how society viewed and treated each other was just as important, if not more so. He returned to his hotel room that night, his mind buzzing with ideas. His usual strategy was clear: disrupt the status quo, create something new, and watch the world shift in response. But what if the disruption wasn't technological? What if it was social? What if the most innovative thing he could do wasn't creating a new product, but reshaping how people treated one another? The more he thought about it, the more certain he became. He would start a new initiative, something that combined his passion for technology with his newfound understanding of human connection. He would use his platform to call for a shift in the way society viewed its most vulnerable citizens. The idea of creating a technology-driven platform to connect people, break down barriers, and provide resources for those in need began to take shape. It would be a global network, accessible to anyone, rich or poor, that would connect people with services, jobs, and opportunities based on their skills, not their social status. It would challenge the conventional notions of worth and success, and it would empower people to help one another, no matter where they came from. Elon knew it wouldn't be easy. The world had long been structured around social hierarchies, and dismantling that would take time. But he had always thrived in the face of challenges. After all, he had started companies and industries that had seemed impossible to revolutionize. Why couldn't he do the same with society? He picked up his phone and started typing out a message to his team. I have an idea. It's time to disrupt something bigger than business. Let's change how we see and treat people. Let's create something that connects us all, regardless of wealth or status. We're going to start a new platform, a social revolution built on empathy, equality, and the belief that everyone has value. Let's talk tomorrow. Elon hit send, feeling a rush of anticipation. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Over the next few weeks, Elon and his team began working tirelessly on the new initiative. It was called Equalize, a platform designed to provide resources and opportunities for people from all walks of life. It wasn't just about giving handouts. It was about empowering people, creating a space where individuals could connect, collaborate, and contribute to society regardless of their background. The project gained momentum quickly. Elon used his network to gather support from some of the world's most influential leaders, philanthropists, and thinkers. He reached out to organizations that were already doing good work but lacked the resources to scale. He partnered with companies that could provide the technological infrastructure for the platform. Slowly but surely, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. As the platform developed, Elon realized that the greatest challenge wasn't the technology, it was changing people's mindset. Convincing the world that human connection was more valuable than wealth, that empathy was more important than status, was a monumental task. But he had seen firsthand how powerful a simple act of kindness could be. He had experienced it on that plane, in the airport, and in countless other moments throughout his life. This was the beginning of something that could reshape society. Equalize would not just be a tool, it would be a movement. A movement built on the core belief that everyone, no matter their circumstances, had something valuable to offer. As the launch day approached, Elon felt a nervous excitement that he hadn't felt in years. This was the biggest gamble he had ever taken. The tech world knew him as a disruptor of industries, but this was something entirely different. It wasn't about building rockets or electric cars. It was about building a new world, one where humanity came first. On the eve of the launch, Elon sat alone in his office, staring out the window at the city lights. He thought about everything that had led him to this point: the luxurious planes, the homeless woman, the family in the airport. He thought about the experiences that had changed him, the lessons that had been hard to learn but necessary. And in that moment, he knew that his life, his work, and his legacy had just taken a new direction. Tomorrow wasn't just the launch of a platform. It was the beginning of a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing each other. a new way of living. And with that, Elon Musk was ready to take the next step in his journey. The day had arrived. The clock ticked down to the final moments before the launch of Equalize, and the weight of it all hung heavily on Elon's shoulders. He had built companies that changed industries, but this was different. This wasn't about technology for profit. This was about technology for humanity, about bridging divides and making the world a better, more connected place. As Elon stood in the conference room, surrounded by his team, he felt an unfamiliar mix of excitement and nerves. He had put everything into this, every resource, every connection, and most importantly, his belief that the world could be better. But now, as the time to unveil the platform drew near, the pressure was mounting. What if it didn't work? What if people didn't buy into the idea? The thought of failure was almost unbearable. "Everything's ready," said Claire, the project manager, her voice steady but tinged with the same excitement Elon felt. "The launch is live in 5 minutes. We've got the media lined up, the influencers ready to spread the word, and the platform servers are prepped. It's time." Elon took a deep breath and nodded. He had a speech prepared, a message that encapsulated everything he wanted Equalize to be: a movement for change, a call to connect, a space for all people, regardless of their circumstances. As the countdown began on the screen, the team gathered around the table, watching intently. Elon stepped forward, his heart racing, and began to speak. "Today, we're not just launching a platform. We're launching a vision for a better future. A future where we don't look at someone based on the wealth in their bank account or the label society has placed on them. A future where we understand that everyone has something to offer, regardless of their past or their current situation. Equalize isn't just a tool, it's a movement that will connect us, human to human, no matter our backgrounds." The countdown hit 0. The platform went live. The team erupted into cheers, but Elon felt a deep, lingering sense of uncertainty. The launch had gone smoothly, but the true test lay ahead. Would people embrace Equalize? Would they use it? Would it make a difference? As the hours passed, Elon's phone began to buzz constantly. Notifications flooded in from all corners of the globe. Messages from journalists, tech experts, social influencers, and, most importantly, from people. People who were already beginning to use the platform, sharing their stories, finding resources, and connecting with others. It was working. Elon sat down at his desk, his eyes glued to the screen as he scrolled through the early feedback. The stories were rolling in. A single mother from Chicago had found a local job through the platform. An immigrant in Los Angeles had connected with a mentor who helped him get a legal job. A student in rural Nebraska had shared a project and received support from someone halfway across the world. The impact was immediate, and it was profound. Elon could see the potential for this platform to change lives, not just by providing resources, but by creating a global network of empathy. It was more than just a place to exchange goods or services. It was a space where people could come together, regardless of their station in life, and see one another for who they truly were. People who needed help could give help in return, creating a new cycle of human connection. The more Elon read, the more he realized that Equalize wasn't just fulfilling a need. It was sparking something deeper. It was sparking a conversation about equality, about how society could no longer afford to ignore the invisible people, the forgotten, the disenfranchised. It was a call to action, but it wasn't without challenges. As the platform gained traction, Elon knew that there would be those who tried to resist the change, who clung to the old systems of inequality and privilege. There were already critics questioning the feasibility of Equalize. Could it really work on a global scale? Would it be sustainable? Would it change anything? Or would it simply be a passing trend? Elon understood these concerns. Change was always met with resistance, and the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But in that moment, as he reflected on the growing wave of support for Equalize, he knew that he had made the right decision. This was just the beginning. That evening, after the buzz of the launch had settled, Elon returned to his hotel room. He stood in front of the window, gazing out at the city below. The lights twinkled in the distance, a reminder of the vastness of the world and the countless people living their lives, some struggling, some thriving. But now, thanks to Equalize, they had a way to connect, to see each other and help one another. He thought back to the woman on the plane, the family at the airport, the countless people he had met in his life who were often invisible in the eyes of society. Equalize was more than just a way to bridge divides. It was a tool to create empathy, to remind people that no matter how far apart they seemed, they were all part of the same human experience. As he turned off the lights and prepared for bed, Elon felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. This wasn't just about business. It wasn't about making money or being the richest man in the world. It was about something bigger. He was creating something that could truly change lives. And that was enough. The excitement surrounding the launch of Equalize was palpable. It didn't take long for media outlets, influencers, and even governments to take notice. The platform's early success was nothing short of extraordinary. However, just as Elon had expected, with the positive momentum came an onslaught of challenges. Within the first week of the platform's launch, Equalize had attracted millions of users, and the stories were pouring in. Young entrepreneurs finding seed funding, displaced workers discovering new job opportunities, and students gaining mentorship from professionals in their fields. It was clear that Equalize was filling a void, one that had been overlooked for far too long. But what Elon hadn't anticipated was the amount of pushback he would face from some of the most powerful figures in society. The first signs of resistance came from the corporate world. Some of the world's most established companies saw Equalize as a direct threat to their own systems. After all, it was designed to democratize access to resources and opportunities, an idea that undermined the very foundation of a profit-driven society. "It's just a gimmick," one major CEO said during a televised interview. "A temporary fad that won't last. People can't just give away resources like that and expect businesses to thrive." Elon watched the interview from his office. He wasn't surprised. It was a predictable reaction from those whose profits relied on maintaining a system of inequality. But Elon wasn't one to back down from a challenge. Instead of retreating, he doubled down. He knew that change wouldn't come easily, especially when the system had been built to keep things the way they were. Equalize was asking people to rethink everything, to challenge the status quo, and that's what scared them. As these criticisms grew louder, Elon began to see a different kind of support emerge from unexpected places. Small businesses, local charities, and even grassroots organizations began to embrace Equalize wholeheartedly. They saw the potential for it to level the playing field, offering them a platform to reach people they had never been able to connect with before. One of the first major supporters was a tech startup in Silicon Valley, led by a young entrepreneur named Maya Thompson. Maya had been following Elon's career for years, admiring his willingness to push boundaries and disrupt industries. When she learned about Equalize, she was immediately on board. "This is what the world needs," Maya said in a conversation with Elon. "Technology has been used for so long to divide us. This is our chance to use it to bring us together. I want to help in any way I can." Maya's team joined the Equalize development group, contributing their expertise in AI and machine learning to refine the platform's functionality. Together, they worked to make Equalize smarter and more accessible, integrating features that would automatically match users with mentors, jobs, or volunteer opportunities based on their skills, interests, and needs. It was an upgrade that would propel the platform to new heights. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. As Equalize grew, the complexities of managing such a large and diverse network began to surface. Elon and his team realized they needed more than just technological upgrades. They needed to implement a robust system to ensure that users felt safe and supported. There were growing concerns about the potential for misuse, fraud, and exploitation within the community. Elon called an emergency meeting with his leadership team. "We can't afford to have this platform fall into the wrong hands," Elon said, his voice firm. "We need to ensure that Equalize remains a space of trust, where people help each other for the right reasons. We can't let greed or exploitation take root." The team spent the next several weeks working on an ethical framework, one that prioritized transparency, accountability, and integrity. They implemented stringent verification systems for users, partnerships with trusted nonprofits to vet organizations, and advanced algorithms to flag any suspicious activity. They were determined to make sure that Equalize wouldn't just be another platform for people to exploit each other. Despite the technical hurdles, the platform's success continued to grow. Word of mouth among users was powerful. as individuals shared their success stories and invited others to join. The idea of a global network where anyone could help anyone, without prejudice or exclusion, was catching on like wildfire. Meanwhile, Elon continued to receive support from unexpected quarters. At one point, he was invited to speak at a United Nations conference about the role of technology in solving global poverty. The platform's reach had already extended beyond borders, and now it was becoming a tool for international collaboration. During his keynote address, Elon stood before world leaders and policymakers, challenging them to rethink how they viewed global inequality. "We have the technology," he said, "we have the resources, and most importantly, we have the ability to change things. Equalize isn't just about connecting individuals. It's about creating a system where no one is left behind, where opportunity is no longer a luxury, but a right." The response was overwhelming. Countries like India, Brazil, and South Africa reached out to explore how they could integrate Equalize into their own initiatives to combat poverty and provide equitable access to education, healthcare, and jobs. Back at the Equalize headquarters, the team was buzzing with energy. The platform had officially become a global movement, and with it came new responsibilities. Elon knew that the journey had only just begun. Equalize had started as an experiment, but now it was clear. It was bigger than him. It was bigger than technology. It was about something fundamentally human. But with success came challenges that were even more difficult than the ones they had already faced. The platform's growth was exponential, and with that came an increasing number of questions. How would they continue to scale? Could they maintain their core values as the platform expanded? Could they keep Equalize from becoming just another corporate-driven product? Elon didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't give up. Equalize was changing the world, and he was determined to make sure it stayed true to its mission of empathy, equality, and human connection. As the world continued to watch, Elon prepared for the next phase of Equalize's journey, one that would take the platform even further into uncharted territory, and one that would test not just his resolve, but the very principles on which the platform had been built. As Equalize continued to grow, so did the pressure. The success stories were endless. The stories of lives changed, of people finding hope and opportunity in unexpected places. But not everyone was thrilled about the platform's success. In fact, as Equalize expanded its reach, certain groups started to view it as a threat, not just to their businesses, but to the very fabric of the power structures they had spent years carefully cultivating. Elon's phone rang late one night. It was Claire, his right-hand project manager. "Elon, we've got a situation," she said, her voice serious. "There's been a massive smear campaign against Equalize. Some of the most influential media outlets are calling it a dangerous experiment. They're claiming it's destabilizing the economy and undermining capitalism." Elon sat up straighter, instantly feeling the weight of the situation. The skeptics had arrived, and they weren't going away quietly. He flipped through his messages. News outlets, pundits, and political figures were all weighing in. Some called Equalize a utopian pipe dream, others a hollow attempt to erase the very structures that made society functional. "It's irresponsible. It's naive. It's dangerous," one prominent economist said on a live broadcast. "People can't just exchange resources without any regulation or oversight. It's a recipe for chaos." Elon knew this kind of backlash was inevitable, but hearing it play out in real time, so publicly, felt like a gut punch. The platform's critics didn't care about the stories of families who had found jobs or communities who had found each other. They only saw the cracks in the system that Equalize was revealing. The idea that a single platform could disrupt years of economic power structures was deeply unsettling to them. As the news grew more hostile, Elon spent countless hours in strategy meetings, trying to figure out how to navigate this new wave of criticism. His team scrambled to develop countermeasures, responding to every article, interview, and tweet with facts, testimonials, and evidence of Equalize's positive impact. But the attacks were relentless. And then came the unthinkable. A hacker group, anonymous and highly skilled, launched a full-scale attack on Equalize servers. The platform, which had been running smoothly, suddenly began to crash under the weight of the cyber assault. Users were locked out of their accounts, data was corrupted, and for a brief moment, it seemed like the entire movement was on the brink of collapsing. Elon sat in his office, staring at the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. His team worked frantically to restore the servers, but the damage had already been done. People were angry. People were scared. And in the midst of it all, critics were quick to seize the opportunity to declare Equalize a failure. The hacker group released a statement. Equalize is nothing more than an illusion. We've exposed its weaknesses. This is a warning. The world doesn't need another utopian experiment. It needs real solutions. The message was clear. They wanted to bring the movement to its knees. Elon was no stranger to adversity. He had dealt with setbacks, attacks, and failures throughout his career. But this felt different. This wasn't just about technology. It was about something much larger. Equalize was a movement, and movements didn't just face technical failures. They faced existential threats. This was a battle for the future of how people would connect, how they would treat one another. And it was becoming clear that there were powerful forces who didn't want that future to happen. The next few days were a blur. The team worked day and night to restore the platform, patch the security vulnerabilities, and ensure that such an attack wouldn't happen again. Elon, though, couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He felt like he was fighting a war on multiple fronts: the cyber attacks, the media backlash, and the rising political pressure to regulate Equalize more heavily. "I've seen companies crumble under less," said Maya Thompson, the young entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, as she sat across from Elon during one of their late-night strategy meetings. "You need to make a choice, Elon. You either go on the defensive and try to protect what you've built, or you go on the offensive and take this fight to them." Elon nodded slowly. He was no stranger to fighting against the odds. His entire career had been about defying expectations and going up against entrenched power. But this felt different. Equalize wasn't just another startup. It was a societal experiment. And as he stared at the team's progress on the board, he realized that he couldn't simply react to the attacks. He had to reshape the conversation. He made a decision. "I'm going to address it head-on," he said. "I'll take the stage and make a public statement. This isn't just about the platform. It's about the future of the world. And I'm not going to back down." The next day, Elon took to the stage in front of a packed audience at a global tech conference. The air was thick with anticipation. Every major news outlet was covering the event, and the world was watching to see how he would respond to the mounting criticism. As he stood there, facing the cameras, Elon felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. The platform he had built, Equalize, was now under attack, not just by hackers and critics, but by the very people who feared the shift it represented. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elon began, his voice steady but resolute. "What I've built is not just a technology, it's an idea. And ideas, when they are powerful enough, can change the world. Yes, Equalize has flaws. Yes, it's not perfect. But it's the first step toward a future where no one is left behind. A future where everyone has access to opportunity, to resources, to connection. And if that's a vision that threatens the status quo, then I'm more than willing to fight for it." The room fell silent, the gravity of his words hanging in the air. Elon knew that he was taking a huge risk, but it was a risk he had to take. He wasn't just fighting for Equalize. He was fighting for a new way of thinking, for a new way of being. The speech wasn't going to end the criticism. It wasn't going to immediately stop the attacks or change everyone's mind. But it was the start of something. It was the moment he decided he wasn't going to let fear, skepticism, or even hackers derail his vision. As Elon left the stage, he was met with a mixture of applause and skepticism. Some people were inspired, while others remained unconvinced. But one thing was clear: he had made his choice. And the fight for Equalize had just entered a new phase. Elon's bold declaration on stage had set the stage for the next chapter in the Equalize saga. The media storm intensified in the days that followed. Some hailed his speech as a defiant stand for change, a call to arms for the underprivileged and marginalized. But the critics, those who saw Equalize as a threat to their power, were quick to mount a fierce counteroffensive. The attacks were no longer just about the platform's functionality or security. They were about its very essence, its vision for a radically different world. "Disruption is one thing," one outspoken political leader stated on a national broadcast. "But turning the entire global economy upside down? That's irresponsible." What Elon Musk and his team are proposing is a utopian dream that has no place in reality. The phrase utopian dream became the rallying cry of equalized opposition. The media began referring to Elon's vision as an unrealistic fantasy, a project driven by idealism instead of pragmatism. Corporate lobbyists, economists, and even some governments started working together to push back against the platform's influence, fearing that it could spark a wave of change they weren't prepared for. Elon didn't back down, though. He knew this was a pivotal moment, not just for Equalize, but for the future of how society viewed wealth, opportunity, and the role of technology in shaping human life. The pressure mounted as Equalize's user base grew, and so did the opposition's efforts to discredit the platform. They began to target the platform's community, spreading rumors of exploitation, fraud, and manipulation. There were reports of false claims being made about the platform, alleging that some individuals were using Equalize to exploit others. And yet, as the stories grew more intense, it became evident that much of it was orchestrated. Nothing more than a smear campaign designed to destabilize the trust people had in Equalize. Elon saw this for what it was, a coordinated effort to quash what they saw as a threat. It was no longer just about hacking into the system or causing technical issues. It was about discrediting the very principles that Equalize stood for. The next move came swiftly. A new set of regulatory measures was introduced by a coalition of governments from some of the world's most powerful nations. They demanded that Equalize be subject to strict oversight, including the regulation of how resources were distributed and the establishment of formal contracts between users. The pressure was growing, and it was clear that Equalize's very existence was under attack. Equalize isn't just an app. It's a movement, Elon declared during an emergency press conference. And movements don't back down just because a few powerful people try to silence them. But even with this steadfast response, the weight of the opposition began to show. The legal battles were long and exhausting. The platform's servers were targeted once again by cyber attacks, this time more sophisticated than ever. The media continued to turn up the heat, focusing on every perceived flaw and exaggerating it beyond recognition. It was during one particularly heated legal meeting that Elon was hit with an unexpected realization. The tide of the battle was no longer just about Equalize's success. It was about its survival. The platform had become a symbol for something much larger than he had ever intended. It wasn't just a tech project. It was a global ideological battle, one that would shape the future of how technology interacted with society. As he sat in the meeting room, listening to the lawyers discuss strategy, Elon thought back to his original vision for Equalize, a simple way for people to connect, share resources, and help each other. But now, in the face of overwhelming opposition, it was clear that the platform had transcended that initial goal. Equalize had become a focal point for everything wrong with the existing system. A system built on inequality, wealth hoarding, and the marginalization of those without power. If Equalize was going to survive, it needed to evolve beyond being just another platform. It needed to become a force for systemic change. Elon gathered his leadership team for a strategy session, determined to come up with a plan that would ensure Equalize's survival and victory. This wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about creating a movement that couldn't be undone. They needed to build a coalition of supporters that spanned across industries, governments, and individuals. A network of people who were committed to the principles of equality, opportunity, and human dignity. We can't keep fighting alone, Elon told his team. If we want to win, we need to unite the people who believe in this. We need to make this about more than just Equalize. We need to make it about the future we want to build. Maya Thompson, the entrepreneur who had joined forces with him early on, stepped forward with an idea. What if we launched a global campaign, she suggested. Not just for Equalize, but for the concept of equitable technology. A movement where every individual, no matter their background, can access resources and opportunities. We show the world that this is bigger than just one platform. This is the future of how we all connect. Elon's eyes lit up. A global campaign. That's exactly what we need. A united front. We show the world that the problem isn't Equalize. It's the system that has held us back for centuries. The system that has divided us and made some people believe they deserve more than others. The team immediately began to work on the campaign, reaching out to global figures, activists, and influencers who shared Elon's vision. They aligned with organizations that had been advocating for social justice, digital inclusion, and economic equality for years. They partnered with nonprofits and NGOs, all committed to a future where technology wasn't a tool of oppression, but a means of empowerment for all. The campaign launched under the name Equalize the Future. Its goal was simple: to spread the message that technology should be a force for good, a tool to break down the walls that separated the rich and the poor, the privileged and the marginalized. The campaign included powerful testimonials from people whose lives had been directly impacted by Equalize, showing the world the human faces behind the numbers and statistics. But the pushback was immediate. Some of the world's most powerful institutions rallied against the campaign, calling it a dangerous movement that threatened the global order. They argued that the message of equality was incompatible with the competitive, capitalist society they had built. But despite the resistance, the momentum for Equalize the Future was unstoppable. More and more people began to rally behind the cause, joining the movement not just for Equalize, but for the future they wanted to create. A future where opportunity was not a privilege, but a right. As the campaign gained steam, Elon knew that the battle was far from over. The forces against Equalize were vast and powerful, but the support for his vision was growing louder, too. The tipping point had arrived. The movement was no longer just a project, it was a revolution. The real question now was, could they win? The Equalize the Future campaign had become more than just a rallying cry. It was a movement that reverberated across the globe. What started as a technology experiment had now evolved into a call for systemic change. Elon and his team weren't just fighting for the survival of Equalize anymore. They were fighting for the future of human connection and opportunity in a world increasingly defined by inequality. As the movement gained global traction, the world watched closely. Support poured in from every corner of the globe, from activists in Africa working to bridge the digital divide, to Silicon Valley tech moguls endorsing Equalize's ethical approach to technology. Celebrities, influencers, and thought leaders began to speak out, not just about the platform, but about the very principles it stood for. The hashtag Equalize the Future began trending worldwide, and soon, millions of people were discussing the implications of a society built on equal access to resources, technology, and opportunity. Despite the growing momentum, however, Equalize's opposition had not been silenced. The world's powerful institutions, particularly financial institutions, continued to resist the movement. They framed Equalize as a threat to the established order, one that would disrupt industries, break down capitalism, and leave the global economy in chaos. Their narrative was designed to sow fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of a world where wealth and power weren't concentrated in the hands of a few. Elon knew that if he was going to win this battle, he needed more than just public support. He needed to create a unified front that could challenge these deep-rooted systems. One of the most pivotal moments in the campaign came when Elon sat down with world leaders during an international summit. It was an unprecedented gathering, a room full of the most powerful figures in government, business, and technology, all convened to discuss the future of global innovation and the ethical implications of new technologies. Elon stood before the crowd, his presence commanding attention as he began his address. "We are at a crossroads," Elon said, his voice resonating with the weight of his conviction. "For too long, we have allowed the same systems to perpetuate inequality, to hoard resources, and to leave billions of people without access to the opportunities that should be their birthright. Equalize is not just about a technology platform. It's about creating a world where everyone has the ability to thrive, where people are not judged by their wealth or their social status, but by their potential." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. The room was silent. "I'm not asking for us to abandon the principles of competition or innovation. What I'm asking for is for us to recognize that we have a responsibility to build a future where everyone has a chance to succeed, a chance to be heard, a chance to create something that benefits all of us." The reactions in the room were mixed. Some leaders nodded, seemingly in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The debate that followed was intense. Some representatives argued that Equalize would destabilize global markets, while others championed the idea, calling it a necessary step toward a fairer world. But Elon stood his ground, articulating a vision of a future where technology wasn't a tool for the few, but a tool for everyone. Days after the summit, Elon received a phone call from an unexpected ally, Mira Patel, a global advocate for economic justice and the leader of a major non-governmental organization focused on poverty reduction. "Elon, you've sparked something big," Mira said, her voice crackling with excitement. "The summit was just the beginning. The public is rallying behind you. But we need to do more. We need to take Equalize to the people, show them that this is their movement too." Elon listened intently as Mira laid out her plan. A global series of events, workshops, and rallies, all aimed at engaging communities and educating them on the power of equal access to resources. The idea was simple but profound. If people could see how Equalize could directly benefit their lives, they would become the movement's strongest advocates. Mira's energy was contagious, and Elon could feel the tide turning in their favor. Equalize had gone from a controversial project to a global force, one that had the potential to transform the world. But it still faced fierce opposition, and the battle was far from over. The next few months were a whirlwind. From Africa to Asia, Europe to Latin America, the Equalize the Future campaign took off. Rallies were organized in major cities, where thousands of people came together to learn about the platform, share their stories, and rally for a future where opportunity wasn't dictated by your zip code or your birthright. Local leaders, entrepreneurs, and even grassroots activists joined forces to promote the idea that everyone deserved access to the tools and resources that could change their lives. Elon traveled the world, making appearances, holding interviews, and meeting with local leaders who were ready to back Equalize. The message was clear. Technology could be a tool for equality, not division. And as the campaign spread, more people began to embrace it, not just as a platform, but as a movement for a better future. But the opposition wasn't sitting idle. They launched counter-campaigns, pouring millions of dollars into media ads that sought to discredit the movement. They painted Elon as a naive dreamer, someone whose idealism was putting global stability at risk. The smear campaigns reached new heights, but despite the backlash, the momentum for Equalize was undeniable. In one of the most pivotal moments of the campaign, Elon appeared on a major live television broadcast, facing a panel of influential critics. The host, known for his hard-hitting questions, wasted no time. "Elon, the world's most powerful institutions have made it clear that they see Equalize as a threat. You've been accused of trying to create a utopia that isn't grounded in reality. How do you respond to that?" Elon looked into the camera, his expression calm but firm. "The real question is, why are they so afraid of this?" he asked. "What is it about equal opportunity, about giving everyone access to resources, that scares the powerful? This isn't about creating a utopia. This is about creating a future where everyone has a shot, where no one is left behind." The host was quiet for a moment, clearly taken aback by Elon's response. "I'm not asking for perfection," Elon continued. "I'm asking for a world where technology doesn't divide us but unites us. Where opportunity is something we all have, not just the fortunate few." The words struck a chord. The broadcast was viewed by millions, and social media exploded with reactions. For many, this was the moment they realized that Equalize wasn't just a project. It was a movement worth fighting for. In the weeks that followed, the campaign reached new heights. The Equalize the Future message continued to spread like wildfire, gaining traction in countries where the gap between the rich and the poor had never been wider. For many, the movement became a symbol of hope, a hope that one day, technology could be used for the benefit of all, not just for the powerful. But the opposition wasn't going to give up easily. As the movement grew stronger, so did their efforts to dismantle it. The real battle had only just begun. As the Equalize the Future campaign continued to gain momentum across the globe, a surprising twist occurred. An unexpected ally emerged from the heart of the opposition. It came in the form of Sarah Collins, a billionaire tech mogul known for her conservative stance on innovation and corporate power. For years, Sarah had been a vocal critic of Elon Musk and his ventures, often dismissing him as an idealist who didn't understand the realities of the global economy. But now, she was changing her tune. Elon received the first hint of her change of heart when he was invited to a private meeting with her, a request that both shocked and intrigued him. Sarah was not someone who reached out easily. She was known for playing her cards close to her chest, and her influence within the business world was immense. This could be the turning point they needed, or it could be a trap. Maya Patel, Elon's trusted ally, had her doubts. "Are you sure we should meet with her? She's been our biggest critic," she warned. But Elon, always open to new possibilities, decided to take the meeting. "Sometimes, the best alliances come from the most unlikely places," he replied. The meeting was set in a sleek, modern office high above the city skyline, a place that reeked of power and wealth. Elon walked into the room, greeted by Sarah's calm, composed presence. She was standing by the window, staring out at the bustling city below. "Elon," she said, turning around with a wry smile, "I never thought I'd be the one asking for a meeting with you. But here we are." Elon took a seat across from her, raising an eyebrow. "I've always believed in second chances. What's this all about, Sarah?" She walked to her desk, picking up a tablet. "You've got my attention, Elon. Equalize is gaining traction faster than anyone could have predicted, and I'm starting to see the appeal. There's potential here, but there's also a lot at stake for people like me." Elon leaned forward, intrigued. "So, you're saying you want in?" Sarah nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving his. "Not exactly, but I'm willing to help. I'm willing to offer resources, connections, and strategic advice. The world's most powerful institutions are still trying to crush Equalize, but if we can get enough of the right people on our side, we can turn the tide in a way no one sees coming." Elon was taken aback. This was the last thing he had expected. But as he listened to Sarah's plan unfold, it became clear that her involvement could be a game changer. She had deep ties within government, finance, and the global business community, resources that could shield Equalize from its growing list of adversaries. Sarah's offer was a delicate one. She didn't want to give up her position as a powerful, independent force in the tech world. She had her own reasons for wanting to see Equalize succeed, reasons that were deeply personal. Over the years, Sarah had watched the growing divide between the wealthy elite and the rest of society. Her company had been part of the very system that perpetuated that divide. But now, she realized, she could use her position to do something different. "We'll need to move cautiously," Sarah advised. "There are too many forces at play that won't hesitate to tear this apart. But if we play this right, we could reshape the entire tech industry, and maybe even the future of the global economy." Elon didn't hesitate. "We're in this for the long haul. If we want to create lasting change, we need everyone, no matter where they stand. If you're with us, we can win this." The deal was struck, and just like that, Sarah Collins, a woman once fiercely opposed to Elon's vision, became an unexpected ally in the battle for Equalize's future. As news of Sarah's support for Equalize spread, it created waves across the business world. Critics were left scrambling for an explanation. How could someone like Sarah, a self-made billionaire and key figure in the traditional tech industry, suddenly support Elon and his controversial project? But her move was strategic. Sarah understood the magnitude of the moment. Equalize wasn't just a new platform. It was the beginning of a paradigm shift. She had always known that true progress could only happen if the old systems of power were challenged, and now, she was willing to be part of that change. Meanwhile, the opposition's narrative started to shift. They had painted Elon as a radical, a dreamer whose ideas couldn't be brought to life. But now that Sarah Collins, a highly respected figure in the business world, was backing him, their arguments began to lose some of their weight. It was becoming clear that Equalize wasn't just a flash-in-the-pan startup. It was a force that was here to stay. With Sarah's resources and connections, Elon and his team could finally fight back on a larger scale. They began to work on securing new partnerships with international businesses and governments who were eager to be part of the Equalize movement. Together, they started to plan an unprecedented global summit, a massive event that would bring together the most influential people in tech, business, politics, and social justice to discuss the future of technology and equality. The summit was to be held in a neutral location, somewhere that symbolized the unity of diverse perspectives, and Elon, with Sarah by his side, knew this would be the moment to show the world what Equalize could truly become. But even as plans were set into motion, there was a nagging feeling in the back of Elon's mind. He knew the opposition would not give up so easily, and he knew that every victory came with a new challenge. But with Sarah's help, he felt more confident than ever. As the day of the summit approached, anticipation reached a fever pitch. Media outlets from around the world began covering the event in the lead-up to its grand opening. For the first time in years, the narrative was shifting. Instead of focusing on Elon's eccentricities or the technical failures of Equalize, the focus was on the future, a future where technology could finally be a tool for equality and opportunity, not division and disparity. The summit would be the ultimate test. It was an opportunity to solidify Equalize as a movement that wasn't just about disrupting the status quo, but about rebuilding the system in a way that benefited everyone. And as Elon prepared for the most important day of his life, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The real battle for Equalize's future, and the future of the world, was about to unfold. The day of the global summit arrived, and it felt as if the weight of the world was on Elon Musk's shoulders. The summit had been months in the making, and it was more than just a conference. It was the pivotal moment that could determine the future of Equalize and the movement for a more equitable world. The eyes of the global community were watching. Everyone, from tech leaders to world governments, from everyday citizens to powerful elites, was waiting to see what would happen next. The venue was a sprawling convention center, located in a neutral country that symbolized unity and global cooperation. It had been meticulously designed for this very event, with massive screens displaying the Equalize logo and interactive platforms for attendees to engage with. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. As Elon arrived at the venue, he was greeted by an overwhelming sense of both excitement and tension. Hundreds of media outlets had descended upon the event, eager to capture every moment. The press conferences were in full swing, and a palpable buzz filled the air. In the lobby, Elon and Sarah Collins stood side by side, watching the scene unfold. This was a moment neither of them could have predicted months ago. Sarah, who had once opposed everything Elon stood for, was now at his side, publicly backing Equalize. Her presence was a powerful statement, signaling to the world that this movement had gained legitimacy and was about to take on a life of its own. "You nervous?" Sarah asked, offering him a wry smile. Elon chuckled, the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "A little, but I'm more excited than anything. This could change everything." Sarah nodded, her face serious. "Just remember, this isn't just about you anymore. It's about the people who've been left behind, the people who need Equalize to succeed." The first panel of the summit kicked off with a discussion on the future of technology and equality. World leaders, business magnates, and tech experts sat in front of an eager audience, each prepared to speak on the pressing issues facing the modern world. Elon took his seat at the head of the table, flanked by Sarah and several key members of the Equalize team. The opening remarks were made by the host, who welcomed the delegates and reminded them of the significance of this gathering. The world was watching. The future of technology, business, and society was being shaped right here in this room. The first speaker, a renowned economist and advocate for social justice, took the floor. "We are at a critical juncture," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We face a growing divide between the rich and the poor, and technology is both the cause and the potential solution. If we are to ensure that innovation benefits everyone, not just the privileged few, we must embrace the idea that access to technology must be equal. That's what Equalize represents, a chance for everyone, regardless of their background or wealth, to share in the benefits of progress." The applause that followed was heartfelt and genuine. For many in the room, this wasn't just a panel discussion. It was a realization that the world needed to change. Elon smiled, sensing the shift in the air. The conversation had moved beyond theoretical ideals. People were starting to see the value in Equalize. But the summit was not without its critics. As Elon took the stage for his keynote address, he could sense the skepticism in the room. Opponents of the movement had made sure their voices were heard. The world's largest corporations, the ones that had prospered off the existing system, had sent their representatives to challenge Elon's vision. A seasoned corporate executive from a major tech conglomerate stood up during the Q&A session. "Mr. Musk," he began, his voice dripping with condescension, "while your ideas are noble in theory, they are fundamentally flawed in practice. You're advocating for the destruction of free market principles. Equal access to technology sounds great, but it risks disrupting industries that are essential to the global economy. We must recognize that innovation thrives in competitive environments. If you force equality on the system, you will choke progress. Elon responded with characteristic calm. I'm not asking for the destruction of competition. I'm asking for a level playing field. Innovation thrives when everyone has the tools to succeed. If we continue to allow a few powerful entities to control access to technology, we stifle progress. Equalize isn't about eliminating competition. It's about ensuring that everyone has the same opportunity to compete. The exchange was intense, but Elon's words seemed to resonate with the crowd. He had an undeniable presence, his passion, his drive, and his unwavering belief in the vision for Equalize shone through. The room fell silent as Elon's response lingered in the air. As the summit continued, the discussions grew more intense. There were heated debates, tough questions, and challenging conversations, but for the first time, the narrative was shifting. People began to see that Equalize wasn't just about leveling the playing field. It was about giving people the tools and resources they needed to achieve greatness, no matter their background. One particularly emotional moment came when a young entrepreneur from a developing country took the stage. She spoke about how she had started her business with limited resources, relying on Equalize to connect her with investors and mentors who believed in her potential. Equalize didn't just give me access to technology, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. It gave me a chance, a real chance, to make a difference. And I'm not the only one. There are millions of people out there who are just like me, who need this platform to succeed. The room was silent for a moment, and then a wave of applause erupted. The young entrepreneur's story had struck a chord with everyone present. It was clear that Equalize wasn't just a platform. It was a lifeline for those who had been overlooked, for those who had never had the same opportunities as the wealthy elite. As the final day of the summit drew to a close, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The debate had been fierce, but the tide was turning. The movement for a more equal world was no longer just a dream. It was a tangible, growing force. Elon, Sarah, and their team had successfully made the case that Equalize was more than just a technological platform. It was a movement that could reshape the very foundation of society. But while the summit had been a success, Elon knew that this was just the beginning. The real work was about to start. Equalize had earned the support of world leaders, influencers, and activists, but the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. As the summit concluded, Elon stood at the front of the stage, looking out at the crowd. He could feel the weight of the moment, but he also felt something else, hope. For the first time in a long while, he believed that a more equitable future was possible. Equalize is not just a platform, Elon said, his voice firm and resolute. It's a movement, and together, we will change the world. The global summit was hailed as a resounding success, but just as Elon Musk and his team began to celebrate the breakthrough, a shadow loomed on the horizon. Success, as Elon knew all too well, often attracted enemies. And it wasn't long before the opposition mounted its most formidable attack yet. It started with a leak. One morning, a massive story broke across the headlines of major news outlets. Equalize exposed. Elon Musk's revolutionary platform may be manipulating data to undermine its users. The article was detailed, accusing the Equalize platform of secretly collecting user data for profit under the guise of equality. It claimed that the platform had been involved in unethical partnerships with large corporations, selling information to third parties without user consent. The backlash was immediate and overwhelming. The story was explosive, exactly the kind of scandal that could derail Equalize momentum. It spread like wildfire, trending on social media and sparking fierce debates. Critics were quick to seize upon the leak, calling for an investigation and accusing Elon of betraying the very people he had promised to protect. The entire foundation of Equalize was suddenly in jeopardy. Elon's phone buzzed nonstop as texts, emails, and notifications flooded in. The negative media coverage was relentless. Headlines proclaimed that Equalize was no better than the very system it had sought to dismantle. Maya Patel, Elon's right-hand strategist, was the first to reach out. Elon, we need to address this now. If we don't, this could spiral out of control. Do you have any idea how this leak happened? Elon was pacing around the room, his mind racing. He had always known there were people who would try to bring Equalize down, but he hadn't expected something like this. No, Maya. This came out of nowhere. We need to investigate who's behind this. But the question of who was behind it loomed large. The opposition had already been making efforts to discredit Equalize, but this felt different. This was a targeted strike, a deliberate effort to destroy the credibility of the platform and its leader. As the investigation into the leak began, Elon convened an emergency meeting with Sarah Collins, Maya, and the core team. They gathered in a secure conference room, away from the prying eyes of the press. "We need to find out who leaked this and why," Sarah said, her tone serious. "But more importantly, we need to figure out how to fix the damage. The public trust is fragile right now." Elon nodded. "I'm not going to let this derail everything we've built. We'll find out who's responsible, and we'll take action. But we can't let this divide us. We've come too far." The team agreed to launch an internal audit of Equalize data practices. They brought in cybersecurity experts and legal teams to examine the platform's operations, hoping to clear their name. But as the hours passed, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. If the leak was true, it would mean that Equalize had failed in its most fundamental promise, to provide a safe, transparent, and ethical platform for everyone. While the investigation was ongoing, the opposition ramped up its attacks. Prominent tech journalists and influencers with large followings began to amplify the story, further fueling the flames of doubt. Even within Equalize's own community, some users began to question the platform's integrity. The trust that had taken months to build was quickly eroding. Elon knew that if they didn't respond swiftly and decisively, the damage could become irreparable. But the pressure was mounting. Every decision felt like it carried the weight of the world. Then came the next blow. During a high-profile interview with a popular TV host, Sarah Collins, one of Equalize's most powerful backers, was asked about the leak. Her response, though composed, seemed to create even more suspicion. "We're investigating the matter internally, and I trust that we will find out what happened," she said. But her eyes, for just a fleeting moment, betrayed a hint of uncertainty. The internet latched onto that moment, spinning it into rumors that even Sarah might not fully believe in the platform's transparency. The public image of Equalize, which had been on the rise, now began to fall at an alarming rate. Elon found himself in a difficult position. The truth was, Equalize had always been committed to transparency and ethical business practices, but the accusations were too serious to ignore. Elon had built his entire reputation on integrity and innovation, but now, it seemed like the very foundation of his company was being torn apart by a single scandal. He called for a press conference to address the issue head-on. The room was filled with reporters, cameras flashing, the air thick with tension. Elon stepped up to the podium, his face grave but resolute. The questions came fast and furious, each one more pointed than the last. "Mr. Musk, can you confirm that Equalize has been selling user data to third parties?" Elon paused, choosing his words carefully. "I want to be clear. Equalize has never sold user data to any third parties. The accusations that have surfaced are based on incomplete and misleading information. We are currently conducting an internal audit to ensure that our platform is operating with the highest level of transparency and integrity. If any wrongdoings are found, we will take immediate action." The reporters fired off more questions, but Elon's answer was unwavering. He knew that this was his moment to stand firm. If he showed any signs of weakness, it would give the opposition the ammunition they needed to finish the job. As the press conference concluded, Elon and his team were left to grapple with the fallout. The public might have accepted his words for now, but in the midst of all the chaos, a breakthrough came. The internal audit revealed that the leak had come from a disgruntled former employee, someone who had been let go after a series of performance issues. The individual had manipulated data to make it appear as though Equalize had been involved in unethical practices. It was a calculated move designed to sabotage the platform. Elon's team moved quickly, taking legal action against the former employee and releasing a public statement to clear the company's name. But the damage, though partially mitigated, couldn't be undone overnight. Equalize had been tarnished, and Elon knew that the road to regaining the trust of the public would be long and challenging. The weeks following the scandal were a blur. Elon Musk and his team at Equalize were caught in a whirlwind of media scrutiny, public backlash, and internal reflection. Despite the leak being traced back to a disgruntled former employee, the damage to Equalize's reputation had already been done. Elon knew that simply addressing the allegations wouldn't be enough to restore the public's trust. He needed to go further. He had to show the world that Equalize was more than just words. It had to be proven through action. Elon sat in a conference room at the Equalize headquarters, surrounded by his closest advisors and the heads of the most influential tech companies they had partnered with. His mind raced, and his hands fidgeted as he reviewed the progress of the internal audit and the PR strategy they had rolled out. Though things were looking slightly better, it was clear the road to redemption wouldn't be easy. Every mistake was under a microscope, every move analyzed by critics and fans alike. "We can't afford another mistake," Elon said, his voice firm, yet weary. "We need to act decisively, or we'll lose everything." Sarah Collins, now a steadfast ally, sat across from him. She had been the voice of calm through many of the stormy moments, and right now, she was the one who could see through the chaos. "We need to double down on transparency," she said. "Elon, the public needs to see that you're not just defending Equalize. They need to see that you're genuinely committed to rebuilding trust. That starts with us here, today." Elon nodded. He was aware that the public didn't just want a response. They wanted to see the leadership of Equalize take full accountability. He was used to taking risks, but this felt different, more personal, more fundamental. The principles that had driven him to launch Equalize in the first place were now under fire. The first step in their recovery plan was a public town hall. Elon and the team knew that a one-way conversation wasn't enough. They had to listen to the concerns of Equalize users, investors, and supporters, and they needed to do it on a global stage. The town hall was scheduled to be streamed live, with the press invited to participate. Elon was determined to be as transparent as possible. The idea was simple: explain the situation, acknowledge their mistakes, and then lay out the concrete steps they were taking to ensure that Equalize would continue to live up to its promises. The day of the event, the world tuned in. Social media exploded with predictions, opinions, and rumors, but Elon felt a strange sense of calm. He had done everything in his power to fix the situation internally. Now, it was time to face the music. As Elon stepped onto the stage, the audience fell silent. His face was serious, and the weight of the moment was clear. There was no fanfare, no flashy introduction, just the man at the helm of Equalize, prepared to face the consequences. "Good evening, everyone," Elon began, his voice steady but resolute. "I stand before you today, not as a CEO, but as someone who believes in the vision of Equalize. We've faced challenges in the past few weeks, challenges that have tested us in ways we never expected. But I'm here to tell you that we are committed to making things right." He paused, letting the words settle in the air. The room was filled with anticipation. "First, I want to address the recent allegations. There was a breach of trust, and for that, I take full responsibility. We've since investigated the matter thoroughly, and while we found that the leak was the result of a malicious act by a former employee, we realized that we didn't do enough to ensure full transparency. We should have been more proactive in explaining our data practices, and for that, I apologize." The audience shifted in their seats, some nodding, others skeptical. Elon could feel the weight of every eye on him, but he continued. "We've implemented a series of changes within Equalize to ensure that this never happens again. Our data privacy protocols are now more robust than ever, and we are working with independent auditors to review every aspect of our platform. We will also be offering more detailed transparency reports that will be accessible to the public. We're not asking for your trust. We're earning it, one step at a time." The tension in the room seemed to lessen, but there were still hard questions to be answered. A journalist stood up, microphone in hand. "Mr. Musk, how can you assure the public that this won't happen again? What concrete measures are you putting in place to prevent future issues?" Elon was prepared for this question. "We are committed to regular audits, independent oversight, and a clear path for users to raise concerns. But most importantly, we're committed to an open line of communication with the public. If there's ever an issue, we'll address it head-on, transparently. We're not perfect, but we're always improving." After the town hall, the feedback was mixed, but it was clear that Elon's message had resonated with many of Equalize's core supporters. For the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope that the platform could rise above the scandal. But recovery was never going to be easy. As the days passed, Elon knew that actions would speak louder than words. He made the decision to visit communities directly affected by the inequality Equalize sought to remedy, places that had been left behind by traditional systems, where the promise of a more inclusive world seemed like a distant dream. His first stop was a small, underprivileged town in the American Midwest, where access to technology was still scarce and job opportunities were limited. There, he met with local leaders and entrepreneurs who had seen firsthand the transformative power of Equalize. One young woman, Maria, approached him after a community meeting. "Mr. Musk, I want to thank you," she said, tears in her eyes. "Equalize helped me launch my small business. Without it, I don't know where I'd be." Maria's story was just one of many. Elon realized that these were the stories that mattered most. The people who had benefited from Equalize's vision of accessibility, who were now able to compete and thrive. This was the heart of the movement. The road to redemption for Equalize would be long. The company had weathered its first storm, but it was clear that it needed to do much more to rebuild trust. Elon's commitment to transparency and ethical practices would have to be proven every day through the actions of the company, the decisions of its leadership, and the continued success of its platform. But for now, there was hope. Elon was more determined than ever to prove that Equalize was not just a platform, but a movement that could change the world, one user at a time. Just as the dust began to settle from the scandal and the recovery efforts seemed to be gaining traction, Elon Musk was confronted with a new opportunity, one that would shift the course of Equalize's journey. The question wasn't if they could fix the damage done, but how to build something even greater from the ashes of their trials. It all started with a surprise phone call. Elon was in his office, reviewing reports on the progress of Equalize's audit and the public's reactions to their town hall. He was deep in thought, strategizing how to maintain momentum, when his phone buzzed. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, but the name attached made Elon's heart skip a beat. "Bill Gates?" Elon muttered under his breath. He quickly answered. "Elon, this is Bill," came the calm, familiar voice of Microsoft's co-founder. "Elon, I've been following the developments with Equalize closely. I know this past month has been rough, but I see an incredible amount of potential in what you're doing. I'd like to talk about a partnership." Elon leaned back in his chair, trying to process the unexpected proposal. Bill Gates, one of the world's most prominent figures in technology and philanthropy, wanted to partner with Equalize? The idea seemed both exciting and daunting. "I'm listening," Elon replied, trying to sound as composed as possible. Over the next few days, Elon and Bill had several discussions about a potential collaboration. Bill was genuinely impressed by the vision behind Equalize, even more so after hearing how the platform had navigated the crisis. Bill's experience in both business and global health initiatives made him a powerful ally in terms of bringing attention to the project. And while there were obvious differences between their approaches, they both shared a common goal: using technology to drive social impact. Bill had been following Equalize's mission from the beginning, and he was particularly interested in how Equalize was empowering small businesses and communities who had been excluded from traditional systems. "Elon, I've always believed that technology can help solve some of the world's toughest problems," Bill said in one of their calls. "But it's not just about creating new tools. It's about making sure those tools are accessible to the people who need them the most." Bill proposed using his foundation's influence and resources to bring Equalize platform to underserved regions around the globe. "We've been working on several initiatives focused on poverty, education, and public health," Bill explained. "What if we combined our efforts to expand Equalize reach, targeting areas where people have been historically left out of the digital revolution?" Elon, ever the visionary, saw the potential in the partnership. Not only could Bill's network amplify Equalize's mission, but the financial and logistical support Bill could provide would accelerate their global expansion in a way that Elon could never achieve alone. "We could do this," Elon said, his excitement building. "We could reach millions of people who have never had access to the kind of opportunities Equalize can provide. Let's make it happen." The announcement of their partnership came as a shock to the tech world. Bill Gates, the billionaire philanthropist, was joining forces with Elon Musk, the maverick entrepreneur. For many, the idea of these two titans of industry working together was unexpected, to say the least. Some questioned the compatibility of their respective visions. Others saw it as a powerful merger of minds that could create unprecedented change. The first major step in their partnership was a joint press conference, where Elon and Bill shared their vision for the future. Standing side by side, they spoke about how the new collaboration would combine the best of both their worlds, Bill's philanthropic reach and Elon's innovation-driven mindset. They announced a multi-million-dollar initiative aimed at using Equalize platform to provide small businesses, students, and entrepreneurs in developing nations with the resources, training, and technology they needed to succeed. Our goal, Bill said, is to empower individuals who have been overlooked and provide them with the tools to thrive. Whether it's launching a business or receiving an education, we believe everyone deserves access to the same opportunities. Elon echoed his sentiments. Together, we're not just trying to fix problems. We're building solutions that will last for generations. This is more than just technology. It's about creating an ecosystem that works for everyone. The partnership was seen as a game-changer in the tech and philanthropy spaces. For Equalize, it was a validation of the company's mission. They had struggled to regain trust after the scandal, but now they had a chance to prove their worth on a global stage with the backing of one of the most influential figures in the world. In the weeks that followed, the collaboration began to take shape. Equalize platform was expanded to include a new set of features designed to help entrepreneurs in developing regions gain access to affordable financial tools, market insights, and education. They worked with local governments and organizations to ensure that these tools would be available to those who needed them the most. Sarah Collins, who had become one of Equalize's most trusted voices, was now leading a team focused on the integration of Equalize resources into these new communities. She spent time in Africa, Southeast Asia, and South America, working with local entrepreneurs to understand their needs and tailor Equalize platform to meet them. It's one thing to have the technology, Sarah said, but it's another to ensure that people understand how to use it and that it's actually beneficial to them. That's what we're focused on now, making sure the solution is effective and accessible. Meanwhile, Bill Gates used his influence to connect Equalize with international organizations, government officials, and nonprofits. His connections were invaluable in helping Equalize navigate the complexities of global expansion. Despite the excitement surrounding the partnership, there were challenges ahead. The logistics of reaching remote communities, ensuring the technology worked in underdeveloped regions, and securing long-term funding were all significant hurdles. But with Bill's resources and Elon's innovation-driven mindset, they were beginning to overcome these obstacles one by one. As Elon sat back and observed the progress, he felt a renewed sense of hope. This partnership wasn't just about recovering from the scandal. It was about creating something even more powerful than he had ever imagined. The future of Equalize was no longer just about a platform. It was about changing the lives of people around the world, providing them with the tools they needed to succeed. The partnership between Elon Musk and Bill Gates was the spark Equalize needed to truly ignite its mission of transforming the world. With Bill's philanthropic network and Elon's innovative drive, they began laying the foundation for what could become the most impactful technological platform for social change. Their ambition was clear. Equalize wasn't just going to be a product. It was going to be a movement, a catalyst for global progress in the realms of business, education, and opportunity. The first step was to expand Equalize's presence in the developing world. With the resources and global connections Bill brought to the table, they were able to secure vital partnerships with governments, nonprofits, and local businesses in regions that had been historically underserved. The initial focus was on providing small businesses in Africa, Southeast Asia, and South America with the tools and training needed to thrive in a digital economy. Equalize platform would become an invaluable resource for these entrepreneurs, offering access to funding, marketing tools, and vital business insights. However, it wasn't just about giving them a set of tools. It was about changing the very system that had left them behind. The launch of Equalize's new initiative in Africa was nothing short of groundbreaking. Elon and Bill traveled to Lagos, Nigeria, to officially roll out the platform's services to thousands of small business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs. In a bustling convention center, Filled with energy and excitement, they presented their vision. A world where everyone, no matter where they were born, had equal access to the tools they needed to succeed. The crowd was diverse, ranging from young tech enthusiasts to veteran entrepreneurs who had been struggling to make their businesses thrive. But as Elon and Bill spoke about their commitment to reshaping global opportunities, the room was filled with a sense of hope. For the first time, it felt like the world's most disadvantaged were being offered the same opportunities as those in Silicon Valley. "This is not charity," Elon said in his speech. "This is empowerment. We are here to give you the resources and opportunities that should have been available to you all along. We're here to help you build, grow, and innovate. And we're doing this together." The reception was overwhelmingly positive. Entrepreneurs in the audience were eager to sign up for Equalize platform, thrilled by the promise of new funding opportunities and resources to grow their businesses. Sarah Collins, who had become a key figure in leading Equalize global expansion, was on the ground working directly with these entrepreneurs. "I've seen the excitement firsthand," Sarah said. "People are ready. They're not waiting for someone to fix things for them. They just need the tools to make it happen." Meanwhile, across the globe, Equalize was beginning to make strides in Southeast Asia. Countries like Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam were also benefiting from the platform's expansion. These nations had rapidly growing economies but faced significant challenges due to lack of access to financial services, education, and technology. Equalize platform offered a solution that was scalable, adaptable, and accessible to people from all walks of life. Equalize's new financial tools, which included microloans, crowdfunding, and other innovative ways to raise capital, were being adopted quickly. These tools were designed to help entrepreneurs raise the funds they needed without relying on traditional, inaccessible banking systems. In Indonesia, for instance, a woman named Amina had struggled to keep her small clothing shop afloat due to a lack of capital and marketing tools. With Equalize platform, she gained access to microloans and digital marketing strategies, allowing her to grow her business and hire more employees. Amina's story was one of many, a testament to the success of Equalize's mission to level the playing field. In South America, the expansion was equally promising. With large populations in countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia, Equalize's team faced a unique set of challenges. These regions, while home to an emerging middle class, had many barriers to entry for entrepreneurs. Political instability, uneven distribution of resources, and limited access to international markets had hindered growth for many small businesses. However, with Bill's connections to local governments and Elon's relentless drive, they were able to create a strategic plan that not only addressed these challenges, but offered a pathway for businesses to scale globally. Elon and Bill took a trip to Brazil, where they met with local government officials and startup accelerators to discuss the future of entrepreneurship in the region. The partnership between Equalize and local entities was crucial in ensuring that the technology would be both accessible and sustainable in the long term. They also secured partnerships with Brazilian tech giants who helped integrate Equalize services into local ecosystems. The Brazilian market was hungry for change, and with Equalize tools in hand, young entrepreneurs were able to disrupt the traditional models of commerce, offering new products and services that were previously unimaginable. One of the most powerful aspects of Equalize platform was its ability to provide educational resources. The knowledge gap was one of the biggest barriers for entrepreneurs in developing regions. Equalize comprehensive digital training programs helped users understand not only how to run a business, but also how to leverage technology to expand their reach. As part of their partnership, Bill Gates was instrumental in linking Equalize with educational institutions, ensuring that the platform's users received the best possible training in areas like business strategy, digital marketing, and financial literacy. Elon and Bill both knew that empowering individuals with knowledge was just as important as giving them the tools to succeed. The initiative was a resounding success, especially in regions where education was often inaccessible or of low quality. Many of the people who joined Equalize platform were first-time business owners, but with the educational resources available to them, they quickly learned the skills they needed to thrive. As the months went by, the ripple effect of Equalize expansion began to show. Not only were businesses flourishing in underserved regions, but the platform's success was bringing attention to the way the global economy was structured. Entrepreneurs were no longer isolated from each other. They were connecting, sharing knowledge, and collaborating. The technology was not just enabling them to succeed individually, but also helping to foster a sense of global community. Elon watched as Equalize's impact began to compound. What started as a simple idea, creating a more equal playing field for people around the world, was now taking shape as a global movement. The vision he and Bill had for a new economic ecosystem was starting to become a reality, one step at a time. However, the challenges weren't over. As Equalize expanded, there were new hurdles to overcome: logistical issues, the need for constant innovation, and the responsibility of maintaining the integrity of the platform's mission. But with Bill's resources, Sarah's leadership, and Elon's relentless drive, they were ready to take on whatever came next. Just as Equalize's global expansion seemed unstoppable, a new crisis emerged that threatened to undermine everything Elon, Bill, and their team had worked for. It wasn't a technological issue, nor a financial crisis. No, this time, it was something much more insidious, a crisis of trust. The scandal had long since been forgotten, and the partnership with Bill Gates had breathed new life into Equalize. The platform had become a symbol of hope and progress for millions of entrepreneurs around the world. But a small but vocal group of critics had been quietly watching, and now they were ready to strike. It all started with an anonymous whistleblower email that landed in Elon's inbox late one evening. The subject line read simply, "The truth about Equalize." Elon opened it, expecting another routine critique or a minor issue to address. But as he read, his stomach sank. The email detailed a series of claims alleging that Equalize's expansion into developing regions wasn't as benevolent as it appeared. The whistleblower accused the company of profiting from the very entrepreneurs they were supposed to help, claiming that Equalize was charging exorbitant fees for services that were marketed as free. There were even rumors about data privacy concerns. Allegations that Equalize was using the platform to harvest personal data for profit without user consent. Elon sat back in his chair, stunned. The claims were explosive, and if true, they could dismantle everything they had built. He immediately called Bill. When Elon shared the details with Bill, they both felt a pang of disbelief. It seemed impossible that Equalize, which had been built on a foundation of trust and empowerment, could be accused of such practices. But they knew they couldn't ignore the allegations. The next step was clear. They had to investigate. "We can't afford to let this fester," Bill said with his characteristic calm. "We need to be transparent, investigate every claim, and make sure we get ahead of this. If the allegations are true, we need to fix them immediately. If they're false, we need to expose the person behind this." Elon agreed, but the stakes were higher now. Equalize had built a reputation for being the antidote to the inequalities in the global economy. If the public found out they were exploiting the very people they aimed to empower, the fallout could be catastrophic. Over the next few days, Elon and Bill initiated a full internal investigation into the allegations. They assembled a team of experts to scrutinize Equalize's business practices, its data collection policies, and its financial transactions. Meanwhile, a PR crisis management team was brought in to prepare for the worst-case scenario. What would happen if the claims were true? As the investigation began, the critics grew louder. Social media was abuzz with accusations. Some claimed that Equalize's platform was nothing more than a well-disguised profit machine, preying on vulnerable entrepreneurs. Others pointed to the platform's fees, which some users argued were disproportionately high for small businesses struggling to survive in developing regions. A series of viral blog posts and YouTube videos began to surface, questioning the motives behind Equalize's rapid global expansion. These posts painted a picture of a company that was using its shiny, social impact narrative to disguise a profit-driven agenda. The trust that had been built so painstakingly over the last several months began to erode. Elon and Bill watched as the backlash gained momentum. The media attention intensified, with major outlets picking up the story. Articles with headlines like, "Is Equalize exploiting the poor for profit?" and "The hidden costs of Equalize revolution" flooded the internet. It wasn't just the critics in the media. Some of Equalize's own partners were now distancing themselves from the company. Nonprofits that had previously been eager to collaborate were now pulling back, unsure of whether aligning themselves with Equalize would damage their own reputations. As the investigation progressed, the team uncovered troubling discrepancies. Equalize platform had indeed been charging higher than expected fees for certain services, especially in developing regions where access to affordable technology was limited. There were also discrepancies in how user data was being handled. Some information had been shared with third-party advertisers without clear user consent. Elon was floored. These findings were difficult to ignore, but they also brought an uncomfortable truth. Equalize had inadvertently exploited the very communities it had sought to help. The company had been so focused on scaling rapidly and reaching as many people as possible that it had overlooked some of the finer details that could jeopardize its mission. "We've built something incredible," Elon said to Bill during one of their many late-night meetings. "But it seems like we've lost sight of the small things that matter. We've got to make this right." Bill nodded. "It's not just about what we've done. It's about what we're going to do next. We've got to be transparent, take responsibility, and rebuild the trust that we've lost. People are counting on us." The next day, Elon and Bill appeared together in a live-streamed press conference. They didn't shy away from the situation. They took full responsibility for the mistakes that had been made. "We've let you down," Elon began, addressing the camera. "Equalize was built to help people, and somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that mission. We took shortcuts, ignored the details, and allowed our focus on scaling to cloud our judgment. For that, we are deeply sorry." Bill added, "We want to be clear. We are committed to fixing this. We will refund any fees that were charged inappropriately, and we will be completely transparent about how we handle user data from now on. Our commitment to social impact has not changed, but we must do better." The press conference was a sobering moment for the company. It was a painful but necessary step toward regaining public trust. Elon and Bill made it clear that Equalize would undergo a complete restructuring to ensure that its services were truly accessible and ethical. The backlash wasn't over, but the first step toward redemption had been taken. Elon and Bill's honest admission of guilt went a long way in rebuilding some trust. However, it was clear that the road to recovery would be long and difficult. As the weeks went by, Equalize implemented sweeping changes. They introduced new policies to ensure that all fees were transparent, fair, and clearly communicated to users. They also overhauled their data collection practices, ensuring that user privacy was paramount and that any data shared with third parties would only happen with explicit user consent. In addition, they began working closely with local advocacy groups and nonprofit organizations to ensure that the needs of entrepreneurs in developing regions were being met. Equalize even offered a full audit of their platform, inviting independent experts to review their practices and provide feedback. In the wake of the scandal, Elon and Bill faced a daunting task: rebuilding the public's trust. It was no longer just about creating a product that worked. Now, it was about proving that Equalize was truly committed to its mission of empowering entrepreneurs and transforming the global economy. The road ahead would not be easy, but it was necessary. The first step in their recovery plan was simple but crucial: reaffirm the mission. Elon and Bill knew that they had to remind people why Equalize had been created in the first place. It wasn't about profit or scaling to astronomical heights. It was about giving everyone, no matter their background or location, the same opportunities to succeed. They hosted a series of public forums, both online and in person, where they directly addressed their critics and supporters. Elon explained the company's core values and how they had become clouded by the rush to grow too quickly. "This is not about becoming the next big tech giant," Elon said during a live-streamed event. "This is about creating a future where anyone, no matter their circumstances, can dream big and build a business. We lost our way for a while, but we're focused on getting back to our roots. We want to be transparent, honest, and accountable." Bill followed up with a message of accountability and action. "We didn't just promise change. We are committed to being the change. Equalize was founded to create equality. We're going to make sure we are doing that with integrity. From this moment forward, every decision will be made with you, the people we are here to serve, in mind." The public forums were a pivotal moment in the recovery process. While many were skeptical, the transparency and honesty Elon and Bill displayed helped to lay the foundation for rebuilding trust. Next came the crucial changes to Equalize platform. In response to the backlash regarding fees and data privacy, Elon and Bill worked with the development team to overhaul the platform structure. They restructured the pricing model to ensure that every service was clearly explained, with no hidden fees, and they offered full refunds to users who had been charged unfairly. The company also released a comprehensive guide outlining how user data was handled, emphasizing their commitment to privacy. They implemented stronger encryption and anonymization techniques to ensure that no personal data could be misused, and users were given control over what data they shared. To prove they were walking the walk, Elon and Bill created an independent oversight board, composed of trusted external experts in business ethics, technology, and privacy law, to regularly review Equalize practices and ensure that they stayed true to their promises. "We've made some mistakes," Elon admitted during a meeting with the team, "but we're going to show the world that we can fix them. It's not enough to just say the right things. We have to prove it through action." The changes were significant, but the impact would only be felt over time. The team was prepared for a long journey, one that would require constant reassessment, openness to feedback, and the courage to continue making the right decisions even when it wasn't easy. A key element of Equalize's comeback was reconnecting with the entrepreneurs who had first believed in the company's mission. To do this, Elon and Bill launched a series of community-building events aimed at directly engaging with the users who had been most affected by the scandal. These events weren't just PR stunts. They were meant to listen, learn, and hear from the very people Equalize aimed to help. Elon and Bill traveled to developing countries where Equalize had the most active user base and held town halls to hear the entrepreneurs' stories firsthand. In Lagos, Nigeria, where the initial launch had been met with excitement and hope, the atmosphere had shifted. Many users were frustrated with the company's practices and felt betrayed. But they also wanted to hear from Elon and Bill directly. When Elon took the stage at a town hall event, he started by addressing the criticisms head-on. "We made promises," he said, "and we didn't deliver. But I'm asking for the chance to make things right. We're committed to working with you, listening to you, and creating a system that actually benefits you." The reception was mixed, but slowly, the tide began to turn. As Elon and Bill listened to the concerns of the entrepreneurs and pledged to address the issues, a sense of cautious optimism started to return. They took note of the specific challenges these entrepreneurs faced: access to funding, education, and reliable infrastructure, and vowed to create solutions that would truly meet their needs. One of the standout moments of the trip was when Sarah Collins, Equalize Director of Global Expansion, shared a new program designed to help entrepreneurs get access to affordable loans. This program, created in direct response to feedback from the community, offered low-interest microloans with a clear, easy-to-understand repayment structure. Entrepreneurs in the room were thrilled by the initiative, and many signed up immediately. As Equalize worked to rebuild its reputation, Elon and Bill knew they had to focus on something even more important than fixing their mistakes: maintaining transparency. Rather than pretending that everything was perfect, they chose to be honest about the ongoing process of transformation. "We don't have all the answers," Bill said in a public statement, "but we are learning, evolving, and making sure that our actions match our words. We'll keep you updated every step of the way." This message resonated with many people. The acknowledgement of imperfection, combined with the commitment to continuous improvement, gave people hope that Equalize wasn't just about profit, it was about doing what was right. Months passed, and the situation began to stabilize. Equalize's platform regained trust, not because it was perfect, but because it had shown genuine accountability and a willingness to grow. The company was now seen as a symbol of resilience, the ability to face mistakes head-on, learn from them, and emerge stronger. By the end of the year, Equalize had not only recovered from the crisis, but had also expanded its user base in developing countries by 40%. More and more entrepreneurs were signing up for the platform, eager to be part of a new system that was built on transparency, fairness, and opportunity. Elon, Bill, and Sarah looked at the numbers with satisfaction, but they knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge was maintaining this trust and continuing to innovate in ways that would create long-lasting, meaningful change. "We've learned the hard way," Elon said, "but this is only the start. The next phase is all about ensuring that Equalize doesn't just help people start businesses, it helps them thrive. We're in this for the long haul." As the dust from the crisis began to settle, Elon and Bill found themselves at a pivotal crossroads. They had managed to rebuild Equalize's reputation, but now they faced an even greater challenge: how to scale the company globally while maintaining the integrity that had become its new foundation. The path forward wasn't just about expanding the business. It was about ensuring that their core values remained intact. It was about proving that a company could grow at an exponential rate and still put its users first. With a renewed sense of purpose, Elon and Bill gathered their leadership team for a strategic summit. The team was now larger and more diverse, reflecting the company's global ambitions, and everyone was eager to dive into the next phase of Equalize's journey. "We've come through the storm," Elon began, addressing the room, "but the true test is still ahead of us. We're about to take Equalize into new regions, new markets. We need to do this in a way that honors our original mission of empowerment, not exploitation." Bill nodded, sharing his thoughts on the importance of staying true to their roots. "Our biggest asset is our community. We've shown that we can admit when we're wrong, and that we're willing to make things right. Now we need to show that we can grow with integrity." The summit was filled with brainstorming sessions and discussions on how to avoid repeating past mistakes. The team focused on three main principles: transparency, community empowerment, and sustainable growth. They made plans to hold regular town halls in every new market they entered, ensuring that local communities had a direct voice in how Equalize was operating in their region. As part of the new expansion strategy, Equalize chose to enter regions where there was a strong entrepreneurial spirit but limited access to the necessary tools for growth, places like Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Latin America. But this time, the company was committed to a different approach: localization. Rather than pushing a one-size-fits-all solution, Equalize worked with local leaders and experts to understand the unique needs of each region. They customized their platform, not just in terms of language, but also to reflect local business practices, regulations, and cultural nuances. Sarah Collins, Equalize Director of Global Expansion, spearheaded the new localization efforts. Each region we enter has its own set of challenges and opportunities. To truly serve these communities, we need to meet them where they are, not where we think they should be. One of the standout features of Equalize's approach was a new feature on the platform called Local Insights. This tool allowed entrepreneurs to access region-specific advice, mentorship, and networking opportunities. Local experts from various industries were brought on board to provide support, ensuring that the advice given was tailored to the realities of the region. Elon and Bill knew that without these localized efforts, Equalize could risk repeating the mistakes of the past, spreading itself too thin and losing the personal touch that had made it a success in the first place. Despite the promising changes and new initiatives, scaling was not without its challenges. As Equalize's user base expanded, the company faced growing pains. Server issues, customer service bottlenecks, and language barriers created friction between the platform and its new users. The level of complexity in maintaining the platform's integrity while scaling globally proved more difficult than anticipated. There were moments of doubt, especially when Elon received a report about the server crashes that occurred in some parts of Asia after a huge influx of users. The technical team had been working around the clock to address the issues, but some regions experienced interruptions that frustrated users and hindered their ability to conduct business. "This can't keep happening," Elon said, pacing the room as he reviewed the reports. "We're asking people to trust us with their businesses. If we can't provide reliable service, we're not going to be able to keep that trust." Bill, ever the calm presence, reminded Elon of their long-term vision. "It's a tough moment, but this is why we're investing in infrastructure. We need to make sure we're equipped for the growth we're seeing." To address the technical issues, Equalize made a major investment in scaling its server infrastructure, partnering with cloud services that specialized in handling high-volume operations across the globe. The company also rolled out new customer service tools, including AI-powered chatbots to answer common questions and real-time customer support to solve issues more efficiently. These investments in infrastructure weren't cheap, but they were necessary to ensure that Equalize could continue to support its growing community without sacrificing the quality of service. One of the most successful aspects of Equalize's new strategy was its focus on entrepreneurial education. Elon and Bill had always believed that knowledge was the key to empowering people, and they realized that simply providing tools wasn't enough. Entrepreneurs needed to understand how to use those tools effectively to grow their businesses. With this in mind, Equalize formed a partnership with several global educational institutions to create an online academy specifically for entrepreneurs. The academy offered free courses on everything from digital marketing and finance to leadership and negotiation skills. Equalize also launched a certification program, which allowed entrepreneurs to earn credentials recognized by business leaders around the world. The launch of the Equalize Academy was met with overwhelming enthusiasm. Thousands of entrepreneurs from developing countries signed up, eager to gain the skills that would help them grow their businesses sustainably. We've seen time and time again that the people who succeed are the ones who have access to knowledge and mentorship, Bill explained during the launch event. This academy is a game changer. It's about giving entrepreneurs the tools they need to thrive, not just survive. Elon, who had always been passionate about education, couldn't agree more. This is a long-term investment in our users. If we want to see true change, we have to start with giving people the knowledge to help themselves. Months after implementing these changes, Equalize saw an incredible shift in both user growth and community engagement. Entrepreneurs from all over the world were using the platform to not only grow their businesses, but also to collaborate and share knowledge. One success story that stood out was that of Amina, an entrepreneur from Morocco who had joined Equalize after hearing about the platform through a local business network. Amina had a small online shop selling handmade rugs, but she struggled to scale her business due to a lack of marketing expertise and financial management knowledge. After enrolling in the Equalize Academy, Amina learned how to use digital marketing strategies and better manage her finances. She also connected with other entrepreneurs in her region who helped her understand the local market better. Within 6 months, Amina's sales had tripled, and she had expanded her business into 2 other countries. This platform changed everything for me, Amina said, speaking at an Equalize event. It gave me the knowledge I needed to take my business to the next level. But more than that, it connected me to a community of entrepreneurs who want to see each other succeed. Stories like Amina's began to accumulate. Equalize wasn't just a platform anymore. It had become a movement. Entrepreneurs were no longer just using the platform to start businesses. They were building ecosystems that empowered others in their communities. The journey to scaling Equalize had been filled with triumphs, but as with any ambitious endeavor, the company's expansion was about to be tested in ways Elon and Bill had never anticipated. Just as the company was gaining momentum, a global crisis emerged, one that would challenge not only Equalize infrastructure but its very mission. It started in late 2024 when a sudden economic downturn began to ripple across global markets. A series of geopolitical conflicts, coupled with rising inflation rates, sent shockwaves through many countries where Equalize had made significant investments. The downturn was particularly severe in emerging markets, where the local currency began to lose its value rapidly, and small businesses were hit hardest. For many entrepreneurs using Equalize, the economic slowdown meant a sudden drop in revenue. What had once been a thriving online business was now struggling to survive. Many businesses in developing nations couldn't afford the cost of essential services on the platform. On top of this, the global shipping crisis disrupted supply chains, making it even harder for small businesses to maintain inventory or get products to customers. Elon and Bill found themselves facing a difficult decision. They had always believed that Equalize's success was built on creating opportunities, but the downturn presented an unexpected problem. How could Equalize continue to empower entrepreneurs when the global economy was pushing them to the brink? Elon was the first to address the situation. In a company-wide emergency meeting, he made it clear that Equalize's commitment to its users would not waver, even in the face of adversity. "We can't control what's happening in the world right now," Elon said, standing in front of the team, "but we can control how we respond. We built this company to help people, and we're going to find a way to help them through this crisis. We've always believed in the power of entrepreneurs, and it's time to prove that belief by supporting them in their time of need." Bill agreed, emphasizing that Equalize's priority was to ensure its platform was still accessible, especially in the most vulnerable regions. They quickly decided to implement a set of emergency measures to assist struggling businesses. The first step was to offer financial relief programs to the affected entrepreneurs. Equalize waived all platform fees for businesses in countries experiencing the worst of the crisis, including parts of Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa. They also worked with financial partners to provide low-interest loans to small businesses, allowing them to access emergency funds to keep their operations afloat. In addition, Equalize rolled out a resilience training program. The academy was adapted to focus on crisis management, teaching entrepreneurs how to navigate economic downturns, manage cash flow during difficult times, and pivot their business models to meet new demands. These resources were made available for free to all Equalize users. Sarah Collins, who had been spearheading global expansion efforts, led the charge in communicating these measures to users. "We need to be proactive in offering support," Sarah explained. "The last thing we want is for people to feel alone. We're in this together, and we're going to help them weather this storm." While Equalize was doing everything it could to support entrepreneurs, the community itself began to show remarkable resilience. Entrepreneurs who had once been competitors were now coming together to share resources, knowledge, and strategies for survival. In Lagos, Nigeria, a group of local entrepreneurs launched an initiative called Business Together, where they pooled resources to provide discounted services to one another. They offered joint marketing campaigns, shared shipping solutions, and even organized group purchasing to save costs. Similar movements sprang up in other regions, proving that the sense of solidarity fostered by Equalize platform was not just a corporate initiative. It was a real, grassroots movement of entrepreneurs supporting each other in times of need. Equalize might have given us the tools, but it's the community that's keeping us strong, said Jamila, an entrepreneur from Kenya, during an online town hall hosted by Equalize. Elon and Bill watched as these grassroots efforts began to blossom. It was a testament to the power of the community that they had helped create, proof that Equalize was not just a business platform, but a global ecosystem built on trust and collaboration. Elon realized that the company could do even more. As the economic crisis deepened, he proposed that Equalize extend its financial relief efforts to include a matching donation program. For every loan or grant given to an entrepreneur in need, Equalize would match the funds with a donation to a local charity or NGO working in the region to support people affected by the downturn. The idea was simple. As entrepreneurs rebuilt their businesses, they would also be given the opportunity to give back to their communities. Equalize would support them, and they, in turn, would support the most vulnerable members of society. "We have the means to help," Elon said, "and now we have the responsibility to do so." Bill was on board with the initiative, noting that it aligned perfectly with the company's mission of creating a more equitable global economy. "This is about creating a positive feedback loop. We help our users succeed, and they help their communities. It's that simple." The donation program had an immediate impact. In several regions, local businesses used the matching donations to fund food and medical supplies for communities facing the worst of the crisis. It was a way for Equalize users to show that the entrepreneurial spirit wasn't just about profits. It was about making a difference. As the months wore on, the economic situation gradually began to stabilize, and businesses that had taken part in the support programs started to see a recovery. Though many were still struggling, there was a sense of optimism in the air, driven by the resilience and resourcefulness of the Equalize community. Elon and Bill saw the company's role in the recovery firsthand. Equalize had not just survived the crisis, it had helped its users survive. And in the process, it had strengthened the very values that had made the platform so successful in the first place: community, collaboration, and shared responsibility. "There's still a long way to go," Bill said, reflecting on the lessons learned. "But I think we've come out of this stronger. We're not just a tech company anymore. We're a global force for good." Elon agreed. And that's the real lesson here. It's not about how much money you make or how fast you grow. It's about how you help others rise when they fall. As the global crisis receded into the past, Elon and Bill found themselves at a crossroads. The challenges they had faced not only reshaped their company, but had also changed their perspectives on leadership and the future of Equalize. They had emerged from the storm, but now it was time to confront the most important question of all. What kind of company did they want Equalize to be in the long run? The company had survived, but the future wasn't certain. They had proven that their platform was more than just a business tool. It was a lifeline during a crisis. But now, with global markets stabilizing and the dust settling, it was time to evolve once more. It was an afternoon in late 2025 when Elon and Bill sat down for a long-awaited conversation in Equalize headquarters. The office was quieter now, the frenetic energy of the past year giving way to a more contemplative atmosphere. Elon broke the silence first. "We've seen what this company can do in a crisis," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But we need to think about the future. We've changed the game for entrepreneurs, but what happens when the crisis is over? What happens when the world is stable again?" Bill nodded. "We've always said that Equalize is about more than just business. But I think we need to ask ourselves, what do we stand for? How do we move forward in a world that's changing faster than we can keep up?" Elon leaned forward. "Exactly. We focus so much on fixing the immediate problems, getting businesses back on track after the crisis. But now we need to focus on what kind of company we want to be when the dust settles. What's the legacy we're leaving?" It wasn't long before Elon and Bill began discussing a new vision for the company, a vision that went beyond business. They realized that Equalize had the potential to be more than a platform for entrepreneurs. It could become a movement for social and economic change. The question was no longer just about providing tools to small businesses. It was about ensuring that entrepreneurship could be a force for good in the world. They wanted to create an ecosystem where sustainability, social impact, and entrepreneurial spirit could coexist and thrive. Sarah Collins, who had been instrumental in Equalize's global expansion, was the first to take the idea to the next level. "What if we built a platform that not only helps people start businesses but also helps them make a tangible impact on their communities?" she suggested during one of their brainstorming sessions. Bill's eyes lit up. "We could incentivize businesses to create sustainable solutions, to engage in social entrepreneurship. Imagine a world where the next great startup isn't just focused on profit, but also on creating positive change. That's a future worth building." Elon smiled. "Exactly. The future isn't just about financial success. It's about creating a world where business can be a catalyst for social change. We've always believed in the power of innovation, and now it's time to put that innovation to work for the greater good." With a new vision in mind, Equalize launched a groundbreaking initiative, the Impact Partnership Program. This program was designed to connect entrepreneurs with social impact organizations, environmental initiatives, and educational nonprofits. The goal was to encourage businesses on Equalize to think beyond profit and to engage with projects that aligned with their mission of creating a better world. To make the program successful, Equalize introduced several new features. They launched a social impact rating system, where businesses could earn recognition for their contributions to environmental sustainability, social equality, and community empowerment. The more businesses focused on positive social impact, the more rewards they would receive, such as discounted platform fees, access to special funding, and enhanced visibility. Elon was especially proud of the initiative. "This is the future of entrepreneurship," he said during the launch event. "It's about businesses that care as much about the world around them as they do about their bottom line. We've always wanted Equalize to be a place where entrepreneurs can thrive, but now it's about using that success to give back." As the Impact Partnership Program took off, Equalize began to see results. Entrepreneurs who had once only focused on profitability were now finding ways to integrate social responsibility into their business models. For instance, a clothing brand from India that had initially sold low-cost apparel began using sustainable materials and donating a portion of their profits to clean water initiatives in rural areas. In Latin America, a small tech startup that had built software for small businesses pivoted to focus on improving access to education for underserved communities by creating affordable e-learning platforms. And in Southeast Asia, a farming cooperative used Equalize platform to expand its reach, selling organic produce while promoting sustainable agricultural practices. The results were inspiring. Equalize was no longer just a platform for making money. It had become a hub for entrepreneurs who were genuinely committed to making the world a better place. The movement had begun to ripple outward, as more and more entrepreneurs embraced the idea that business success didn't have to come at the expense of the planet or society. Despite the success of the Impact Partnership Program, the road ahead was not without challenges. As Equalize's influence grew, Elon and Bill faced the task of maintaining the momentum without losing sight of their original mission. The temptation to scale faster, expand more aggressively, and chase short-term profits was ever present, and they knew that they had to be cautious. How do we stay true to our vision? Elon asked during a team meeting. We've got a lot of people now, a lot of moving parts. How do we ensure that we're not just building a company, but a movement that endures? Bill knew this was a delicate question. We need to build a leadership structure that keeps our values intact. We need leaders who don't just focus on growth, but on impact. People who believe in our vision as much as we do. They decided to implement a new leadership development program within Equalize, aimed at training future leaders who would uphold the company's core values. The program was designed not only to develop business acumen, but also to teach social responsibility, sustainability, and ethical leadership. Graduates of the program would go on to become the next generation of Equalize leaders, guiding the company's growth with a deep understanding of the importance of making a positive social impact. By 2026, Equalize had transformed from a startup helping entrepreneurs survive a global crisis to a company shaping the future of global business. Entrepreneurs from all corners of the world were now part of the movement, creating businesses that were profitable, sustainable, and socially responsible. The company was finally fulfilling its promise, not just to provide tools, but to enable people to change the world for the better. Elon and Bill looked out over the global landscape they had helped shape. It wasn't just about market share or revenue anymore. It was about the lives they had touched and the world they had helped transform. This is just the beginning, Elon said. Looking at the horizon, there's still so much more we can do. Bill smiled. And together, we will. With Equalize now recognized as a force for good, the company was at a crossroads. Having established a global network of businesses driven by purpose, sustainability, and social impact, Elon and Bill knew they were on the brink of something bigger. The dream that had started as a tool to level the playing field for small entrepreneurs was now evolving into a global movement with the potential to reshape entire industries. But there was a new frontier to conquer. Equalize had become a successful platform for millions of entrepreneurs, yet there were still vast regions of the world that remained untapped, regions where access to resources, education, and technology was limited. As Equalize's network expanded, Elon and Bill became increasingly aware of the digital divide that still existed in many parts of the world. While the platform had flourished in developed countries, many entrepreneurs in rural areas or underdeveloped regions still lacked the resources to access Equalize's full potential. Elon, ever the visionary, knew that to fulfill the company's mission of creating a truly global network, Equalize had to bridge this gap. But the question was how? We've built a platform that connects businesses, but how do we bring the power of Equalize to places where the internet is unreliable or access to technology is limited? Elon asked, pacing around the boardroom. Bill, who had been studying emerging markets and global digital trends, quickly pointed out the scale of the issue. We're talking about areas with limited infrastructure. Entrepreneurs can't even access stable internet, let alone run an online business. We need to rethink how we deliver our services. After months of research, meetings with experts, and countless brainstorming sessions, the solution began to take shape. Equalize decided to launch an initiative called Equalize for All. The goal was to make the platform accessible to entrepreneurs, regardless of where they lived, by overcoming the barriers of digital infrastructure. Elon and Bill proposed a multi-pronged approach. First, they would work with governments and nonprofits to build partnerships that would provide low-cost or subsidized internet access in rural and underserved regions. They'd also launch mobile-first versions of Equalize, designed to function in areas with limited connectivity. These apps would be lightweight, using minimal data but still offering essential services, allowing entrepreneurs to manage their businesses efficiently, even in places with spotty internet. But it wasn't just about connectivity. To truly empower entrepreneurs in these regions, Equalize needed to address the knowledge gap. Bill emphasized that the company could leverage its global reach to provide access to training and resources that could help even the most underserved entrepreneurs thrive. We need to make sure that knowledge and opportunity are not limited by geography, Bill said. We can't just give people the tools. We need to show them how to use them. To launch Equalize for All, Elon and Bill realized that collaboration was essential. The tech industry, nonprofits, and governments needed to work together to create a scalable solution. In early 2027, Equalize entered into a series of strategic partnerships with global organizations like the United Nations, the World Bank, and the Gates Foundation to fund digital literacy programs and provide free access to essential tools for entrepreneurs. In addition to these partnerships, Equalize also created a global ambassador program where successful entrepreneurs in developed countries would mentor and guide new entrepreneurs from underserved regions. The goal was to provide both technical support and a sense of community to those who had never had access to such resources. By the middle of 2027, Equalize had already seen a significant shift. Entrepreneurs in countries such as India, Nigeria, and Brazil had started to embrace the new mobile platform, and Equalize training programs began seeing widespread participation. Many of these entrepreneurs had never run a business before, but were now utilizing Equalize tools to start businesses in industries ranging from agriculture to tech. In rural Kenya, a woman named Amina, who had never had access to a computer, used Equalize mobile platform to start a small online business selling handmade jewelry. Despite living in a village with no electricity and only intermittent internet, Amina was able to reach a global audience and find a market for her products. She used the platform's mobile app to track her inventory, receive payments, and even access business education through Equalize Online Academy. The moment I was able to create my first online store, I felt like the world was open to me, Amina said during an online meeting with Equalize mentors. I'm not just selling jewelry, I'm sharing my culture with the world. Elon and Bill's dream had become a reality for Amina and countless others like her. Equalize was no longer a business tool. It had become a global movement for empowerment, opportunity, and social change. As Equalize expanded its reach, it saw not only economic growth, but also a positive ripple effect on local communities. Entrepreneurs were using their newfound success to support their families, educate their children, and uplift their communities. In countries where poverty was once a harsh reality, entrepreneurship was now seen as a way out, an opportunity to build something greater than oneself. In rural Brazil, a group of farmers, using Equalize platform, formed a co-op to sell organic produce. With guidance from Equalize educational resources, they learned how to scale their business sustainably and export their products worldwide. The income generated allowed them to reinvest in local schools, healthcare, and infrastructure, creating a self-sustaining cycle of growth and development. As Equalize entered 2028, the company had seen a meteoric rise in both users and impact. They had successfully connected millions of entrepreneurs from all corners of the globe, creating a truly inclusive economy. However, Elon and Bill were keenly aware that the journey was far from over. There were still billions of people who had not yet had the opportunity to join the global entrepreneurial movement. In their final conversation of the year, Elon turned to Bill. "We've done it. We've created a platform that's truly global. But I know this is only the beginning." Bill smiled. "It's just the start of a new era. We've seen what's possible when we think beyond borders and beyond profit. Now it's about ensuring that no one is left behind." Together, they looked toward the future, where Equalize would continue to empower entrepreneurs, foster global connections, and create a more equitable world for generations to come. As 2028 came to a close, Equalize had achieved what many thought was impossible. From humble beginnings as a startup focused on helping entrepreneurs survive a global crisis, the company had transformed into a global movement. Not only had they helped millions of small businesses thrive, but they had also created a legacy of social change, empowering entrepreneurs across the globe to use business as a force for good. But now, with the platform at the peak of its success, Elon and Bill were beginning to think about the next phase of their journey, not just for Equalize, but for their own futures. What had started as a shared dream was now a reality that had changed the world. It was time for them to reflect on how they had reached this point and what it all meant. Elon and Bill had always been focused on the future, on what the next breakthrough would be, the next challenge to overcome. But now, as the world seemed to be stabilizing and Equalize had become a force in the global market, they found themselves pausing, reflecting on how far they had come. It was in early 2029 when they took a rare break from their hectic schedules to sit down together, far away from boardrooms and strategic meetings. They had chosen a quiet retreat in the mountains, where they could reconnect with themselves and the purpose that had driven them all these years. Elon broke the silence. "It's strange, isn't it?" he said, staring at the horizon. "We've done so much, changed so many lives, but there's still this feeling of unfinished business. There's always more we can do, more we can give. Bill smiled softly, nodding. I think that's the point, Elon. It's never about reaching some final destination. It's about the journey, about the people we've helped along the way, and the changes we've inspired. We may not be able to change everything, but we've started something that will last. Their conversation turned to the future of Equalize and what it meant for the millions of people who had relied on the platform over the years. Elon and Bill were proud of what they had built, but they knew that the true success of Equalize would be measured not by revenue or market share, but by the impact it had on society. They had created a company that wasn't just about making money, it was about changing the world. Equalize had inspired countless entrepreneurs to think beyond profits, to see business as a way to solve global challenges, from poverty to environmental sustainability. As the final chapter of their shared journey with Equalize unfolded, Elon and Bill began to realize that their legacy wasn't just in the success of the platform. It was in the movement they had sparked. While Elon and Bill began stepping back from the day-to-day operations of the company, they made sure that Equalize's mission would remain unchanged. The leadership they had nurtured over the years had grown into a strong, passionate force. The next generation of leaders at Equalize were not just focused on business growth. They were driven by the same vision that Elon and Bill had first shared: to create a better world through entrepreneurship. The company had transitioned to become a global force for good, with thousands of businesses committed to sustainability, social impact, and ethical leadership. Equalize's Impact Partnership Program continued to grow, and its global ambassador network connected entrepreneurs from every continent. New initiatives were launched that expanded the reach of Equalize into even more underserved regions, ensuring that the entrepreneurial revolution they had started would continue for years to come. The platform had become more than just a business tool. It had become a lifeline for those who had once been excluded from the global economy. As Elon and Bill moved into the next chapters of their lives, they remained deeply involved in the movement they had started, though in different capacities. Elon continued to innovate in his other ventures, while Bill focused on mentoring the next generation of leaders, ensuring that Equalize's impact would continue. Together, they had built a foundation for a new kind of business, a type of entrepreneurship that wasn't focused on wealth or power, but on purpose. Their dream was not to create another tech company, but to start a global revolution in how people viewed business and its role in society. And in that vision, they found a peace that eluded them for so many years. They had not just created a company, they had created change. By 2030, Equalize had helped tens of millions of entrepreneurs across the world, from the poorest villages in Africa to bustling metropolises in Europe and Asia. The businesses on Equalize didn't just survive, they thrived, creating jobs, building communities, and addressing the world's most pressing challenges. Elon and Bill had left their mark on the world, but it was the entrepreneurs they had empowered who would carry the torch into the future. They had shown the world that entrepreneurship could be inclusive, sustainable, and transformational. And in doing so, they had changed the very fabric of the global economy. The legacy of Equalize was not in the profits it generated, but in the lives it touched, the communities it uplifted, and the future it helped shape. The journey of Equalize is a testament to what can be achieved when we look beyond traditional business models. Elon and Bill have shown us that entrepreneurship can be a powerful tool for change, one that can create a better, more inclusive world. But the question remains, how will you contribute to this vision? What will you do to create positive change through entrepreneurship, no matter how big or small your efforts may seem? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Share your ideas, your experiences, and your dreams for a world where business and social impact go hand in hand.